Call to order.
You don't need to call to order.
Well, I got it, okay. All right, call into order our the Board of Selectmen goal setting meeting on January 27th, right? Yep. At 4:03. 4:03. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, I can just kick off where we left off. So last time we made it through Parks and Recreation, the existing items from the previous goal setting, and then we had just started to brainstorm for items, like new items that looks like we requested under Parks and Rec, but we didn't get a chance to finish this. I don't know if you had your notes from last time, but if people had items that they wanted to add for Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, I have one, and I don't know if Parks and Rec is the best place, but basically supporting the work of the pollinator proclamation that the select board approved. I know a lot of that falls under Tom's area.
Which is a good spot to start.
Sure. Wait, sustainability, would we put that under, because that was kind of a separate item, would we put that under Parks?
So I actually wanted to get your thoughts on this, because one thing that the clean energy, the energy plan and the pollinator proclamation have in common is that they're initiatives that are good for the environment that also have potential of saving money. And I didn't know if you wanted to sort of like codify it in that kind of way.
Because after the presentation the other night, somewhere I wrote this sustainability list. Did we have that last year?
The priority?
Yeah.
I don't recall.
Okay. So if it falls under something.
Yeah, I mean, it's more under the work of like Tom's area.
Okay.
I know we already have capital improvements at Territorial Park, but I think there's still some improvements that need to be made to Simsbury Farms as well, right? So I don't know if that is a separate thing, or if we just want to say capital improvements to parks in general, or what?
Well, we've got to, let's remember we have a master plan out there that's done, that gives guidance, if you will. Not necessarily in a heavy-handed way about prioritization of them, but if we go down that path, and which I'm full support of the conversation, I say we should reacquaint ourselves with the Parks and Rec master plan, which gives guidance to capital improvements, so that we don't move outside. We don't want to.
Right, like add on to what we've already.
Or take our non-expert opinions and diverge something that's already been laid on the path forward. So
Specifically with relation to capital improvements.
Which is, I mean, it all comes from, it's all based on money, right? So whether it's
Right. Okay. I think that's good.
I like us, but selfishly as a Parks and Rec, I like us thinking about, do we need to ourselves as a group reacquaint ourselves with the Parks and Rec master, not reacquaint, or get a better understanding of what it actually says as it should frame it. So.
I think that's worded pretty well, like, in context with what's in the plan, right? But none of us remember what's in there right now, but we know that it's a priority. So.
I guess what I'll state is, what I meant was, I'd caution us, and Amber wasn't doing it, I'd caution us of grabbing something that's specific to a Parks and Rec and highlighting it as a priority of us without us considering it in the broader scope of what the master plan says to do.
Right.
Or in the context of capital and capacity and everything else.
Yeah. Well, that leads into the whole Flower Bridge story. It's already on the CIP. It's out, it's a couple of years or something like that.
It would be 23, 24? Maybe it's 23, 24. It's soon.
Okay, but here's another thing though, just a way to think of some of this. Some of this stuff we could put up there as priorities because now we have ARPA funding that we may be able to bump things up on a list.
Right.
So if we call them out specifically, that might be a good way to acknowledge they might move to the top of the list or something if we have funds.
I would love to see us maintain a separate capital priority list here, because I think that's a whole different conversation.
A separate what?
Capital.
Yeah.
That's a whole half day.
Do that? Let's capture it.
As I say, to Chris's point with the, the Park and Rec Master Plan, we did our best to really take sort of that next 6-year snapshot in terms of, the overall portfolio and probably what was most urgent. And there were definitely some items on the capital plan from just this past budget season. There was definitely some work at Terrible Park that we had flagged that was, on the more urgent list, like the pickleball court, the playground there. I think the pavilion had some work there as well. And for Simsbury Farm, we definitely had some work to the golf clubhouse and a few other things, the playground that needed to replace. So there's definitely, for these 2 larger parks, there are definitely some items in the upcoming capital plan for that.
So the, but that's a unique, as a whole, I think that's a unique category because we have a master plan versus some of those other, we don't really have a master plan for transportation. We do have an ongoing infrastructure master plan project, right?
And we have the bike ped master plan that would sort of fall under there.
The which one?
The bike ped master plan?
Under transportation?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
under
okay.
transportation
All right.
infrastructure.
Yeah, so, public safety, I don't know that we have we don't have necessarily a master plan for public safety, so that's what I'm saying, it's just that the Parks and Rec one might be interesting, we should probably, as a group, familiarize ourselves with the master plan.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, and just for some of our newer members, it was very fascinating. Our EDC with the Main Street Partnership has been working with DKA to refresh all of our marketing materials, and we had a great response rate to a survey that we did, I think it was just over the summer now, and it was really fascinating because the number one reason people were sort of citing why they love Simsbury, why they visit Simsbury, why they want to live here, why they want to move here, it was actually our outdoor parks and rec amenities, and our schools were number 2. And it was very interesting and I think fascinating data because anecdotally we hear that a lot from people, from realtors, from others, that that's one of the reasons why everybody chooses to move here is because of our infrastructure in this area. So it was neat to see such a large response rate in that survey and to see people really focused on this particular topic area.
And, again, deflating the idea, but as an example, Amber, and said, you guys may not know it on the board because the plan was done a while ago, but the pollinator pathway, it's not necessarily, the theme of vegetation management is all throughout the Parks and Rec master plan. It hasn't changed over. So do we need to do something specific to the pollinator pathway or pollinator project, or are we already doing it by hopefully adopting these processes these new processes that the Parks and Rec team is going to adopt itself? So we could say we're super supportive of it, but that document talks a ton about not mowing the block next to Curtis Field and all that kind of stuff. So, and I don't want us to get involved in things that are already possibly being done proactively by the team already, and let's focus on some stuff that no one's focusing.
So should we move off of Parks and
No,
Rec
I
for now?
want us to think of through the lens of, as we, I wouldn't have thought about it, but as we put these up there, we're thinking, oh my gosh, are these already being
Right.
considered as part of other initiatives?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is maybe we move to a topic that isn't covered by another initiative that's up on the board to get it on the radar
Get
of all of
moving,
us,
yeah.
right? Because,
But just again, to Chris's point, I'm actually very glad that he brought that up because this is an area that since we did the master plan, we have spent a lot of time and energy. We have an open space work group, along with a couple of our staff members, including our office. We've been spending a lot of energy on this, and it has been a priority. And I think we've made some really good strides in it, but there's still a lot of work to do. So thank you, Chris. I'm really glad you brought that up, and I hope that's.
Oh, my second good idea. It's like,
Oh my gosh, you
No,
should
that
just
was-
leave right now.
Am I tied for you now,
So
Cassie?
hopefully that captures it, but.
I have just a general question
Sure.
that I'm not sure if it fits under this, but since you brought up vegetation management, heard from a lot of people that are concerned about the trash, not just at the parks, but on trails.
Oh, yeah.
And like, you know, we have had cleanup days in the past, and that's certainly something I've been interested in, like from a volunteer standpoint, like having like a volunteer, you know, cleanup day. But I just don't understand like where that responsibility fits, and I think that it is kind of bifurcated perhaps between Parks and Rec and Public Works, depending on what the trail is, which may not be apparent to residents, but internally that's how it goes. Could you just address that, or is that covered under this vegetative management plan or not, or what?
Yeah, so it does depend somewhat on the section of trail. Typically, Public Works is more involved with the trail when we're doing things like repaving sections of the trail, where the Parks and Rec team is sort of more things like routine, like day-to-day maintenance if a trail issue pops up, tree work, fence work, those types of things. So Parks and Rec, by and large, is responsible, I would say, more so for trail maintenance. And then Public Works and engineering, more so on the front end for like design work, tend to get more involved in the parks. It really is a collaborative effort between the two groups. You're right, it can be confusing at times.
But from a trash management standpoint, we voted but for Rotary Park to take away the trash can, because the expectation is you bring it, you leave with it.
Right.
So there is nobody going around picking up after the
But
residents.
And I understand that at the parks. I think that the trails, the paths have had such heavy use during the pandemic that trash is kind of accumulating, and I know there are many residents that are really great about going out and picking it up. But, and I just was curious like how that fit in, and I'm not sure that it's something that like, you know, it is, I think it's just an issue out there that we may be able to kind of help address.
So if I'm correct, we don't as a town have a town-promoted spring and fall Earth Day cleanup day.
Right.
We have, we have, as Amber, we have alluding to, you know, fantastic special interest group, but that are doing things on their own.
Right.
But are you
But like we
asking
could, yeah, I'm
potentially-
saying like, I think it would be great if we did as a town have like a community cleanup day, tie it in with Earth Day. You could tie it in with a pollinator kickoff with spring, with all that kind of stuff. And we could, as a board, we could promote that. Because I also think people are looking for ways to connect, and volunteers are looking for projects and things to do to get back out in the community, and that would be
I love that.
great to do that. But I just wasn't sure who was responsible, because sometimes I think people have this idea of, like somebody literally was like, well, you know, it's not snowing, so maybe they could pick up trash. And I'm like, well, I don't think the same people that are responsible for clearing snow also do that. You know, it's actually, it's different departments, different functions.
Eric want to say something?
I think that a town-sponsored cleanup day would be very well received, and I think it's relatively low effort compared to other things.
I would agree as well.
I do too. And I also heard from a couple constituents related to the bike path in the last few weeks or months that I relayed over to Tom, because he had talked to them and they were complaining about sections of the bike path. And I said, because I think you had mentioned a cleanup day, that might be a nice idea. But I said, you might be a little bit back on the radar because it's the middle of winter, but looking to spring, I think that would be great.
Yeah, so let's coordinate with the Farmington Valley Trails Council, because they already have a cleanup day. It's the first weekend in April usually. So we should coordinate with them and either double up those efforts or find a time afterwards. But there is a pretty substantial trail cleanup effort that happens by the first or second.
Yeah, there is this, obviously, their scope is the trail, but you know, there's probably a wider opportunity to clean up some of our other open space areas.
Like if we said, so part of that is, I think part of it is, even more importantly, is giving people a place to bring the trash. So, you know, we do, so my family does, in the fall, the kid, and me, basically, my kids are useless, we do Helen's Way. And we do it in November, once all the everything dies, and you can get in there. It's frozen, and you don't get worried about getting into this wet. But it's kind of there's a small window where you get the maximum amount of it. But some of the stuff I pull out of there is gross, you know. And it's like, well, do I stuff it into the? So I think even one of the best things that we can do, whether somebody says I'm choosing to it doesn't really matter where it is. We'll give you the bag, we'll give you the gloves, we have whatever. You can do your street,
Yeah.
you can do a park, whatever, and here's where you bring your trash. Or, better yet, maybe if you tell us possibly that it's there, maybe it's a common 3, 4, the schools, the front door of the schools are the common receptacles, we'll come get it. Something like
The
that.
6 of us should coordinate this. We call up the guy that used to be on the board that has the trash cans and we get this done.
Mhm.
So let's
Yeah.
keep going.
Okay,
So-
can I add to
Yeah,
this?
it's a great idea.
Another, this is a small thing, well, it's really a small thing, but we had talked about, similar to that, was doing a day to rebuild the gazebo at Schultz Park. Does anybody remember that conversation?
Yeah, we did, but we tabled it because we
What?
wanted to build right.
Oh, we didn't want to do it?
I'm just
Okay.
saying.
Well, people do Habitat for Humanity,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
able
no,
to build
so
a
you're
house,
saying
so.
encouraging someone to come up from the
Okay,
outside.
but
These
never
are all
mind.
great projects, but I mean, these are not strategic.
Okay, so then let's move to another topic.
But they are community, the cleanup day can be community oriented.
Right, yeah, because I think it's a good volunteer opportunity.
I'm good with it. The 6 of us can do it anytime we want.
Well, we'll plan an official day that
Well,
we'll
okay.
announce and we'll push out that we're sponsoring it and
Okay.
rally people, right?
I'm just sensitive that this is not something we should be utilizing town assets for, that they already don't have time for what we have to do.
So,
Today, this is everyone's job.
so Sean feels like he's making some progress. Go to infrastructure.
Oh, I was gonna go to, I have a couple things that are top on my agenda to go to, but.
Under Parks and Rec,
No, on
Oh.
another topic.
I was just moving to infrastructure, I
Okay.
think to the right of it.
Anything else on Parks and Rec? Okay.
Sure.
Okay, great.
Not co-opting infrastructure, but if you look at the list from past
Oh,
prioritization.
yeah, I don't have my list with
Oh,
me.
you don't have it?
I left it there. I can pull it up.
Well, it's just it's interesting because there's a couple of things on there that seem to be timely or being current or being talked about. So the first one is prepare a visual of what the north end of town will look like. Maybe a black, after Big Y and sidewalks are complete. And I think it's a great, anyways, so the topics are prepare visuals of the north end, advocate for the expansion of water and gas line installation, improve cell service in town, parking improvements, and research underground utilities for center of town. Those are the topic of 5. So are you, Murray, are you status as of November 30th, 2021? But that's the report out is I can't read all
Oh,
of it.
that's okay, and I can, we can, Russ, I can quickly take this for you. So the
Yeah.
research underground utilities for center of town, this was just so cost prohibitive. I would say that this is probably an item we can drop at this point in time. And other items I think we could drop at this point in time, we did prepare the renderings for the north end with the sidewalks, and we have those available. And let's see, I would say we're still working on cell service in town. I think we've done a nice job with coordination between utilities, so we could probably drop that as well.
Which one?
Advocate for expansion of water
Okay.
and gas line installation, increased coordination between utilities. The 2 that I would say we're still actively working on, where I think we could still continue to make progress, are improved cell service in town and the parking improvements. So my suggestion would be to keep those 2, and the other 3, I think we've really done the work that we can at this point in time.
So the only thing I would just say from that is, that was my pet peeve, and that we dig up the road and we don't put down the basic infrastructure, and digging up the road is the most expensive part. Laying the 50-cent PVC for the water line is the cheapest part. And that just frustrates me, because every one of these roads in town has been dug up, but we have very limited water and gas coverage, and in some cases sewer coverage in this town. And it seems to not make any sense that when we dig up a road, basic infrastructure is not included.
So Sean, is that, when you were saying for advocate, for, yes, essentially, it's encourage, I'm gonna call it CNG, whatever the gas company is now.
Encourage coordination among utilities.
Okay,
I'm
So
gonna
it's-
go as far as, again, if we dig up the road, even if they don't want it, we put it down and sell it back to them, lease it back to them, whatever, because again, the most expensive part is the asphalt and the excavator and everything else. It's not the 50-cent pipe.
What are we talking about with the?
When we dig up a road,
Yeah, but
and we
what's-
lay a sewer line, we don't lay a water line and a gas line. We
Okay.
only lay a sewer line,
Okay.
which is a woeful waste of the most expensive part of the project, which is digging up the damn road.
Does that matter, does it matter though if there's gas or, you said gas and, I'm sorry,
Water.
water? Is it, I guess it's water, but does it matter if there's gas at either end of the cut though? Are you saying just put what happens if there's no gas anywhere? Are you saying just put the pipe in there?
I think we need to continue to be, obviously, we're not gonna put it at the end of a cul-de-sac where it's never gonna get there. But if there's an opportunity to build out the infrastructure, and again, it hasn't happened in a long time in this town, but still, when wells go bad, everybody comes to the town for help. So if we continue to reinforce and invest in our water infrastructure in a way, and it makes sense of coordinating with the utility, I'm not advocating a massive cost on the taxpayer. But again, if 95% of the project is the sewer and the road and the asphalt and everything else, and there's a small incremental cost to lay the additional pipe, I think we need to just think about that as we make improvements in the community.
Yeah, I'm very supportive of the concept. But do we just word it the same way that it's been, or are you proposing? that
I'm
we-
fine, that's all I'm
Yeah.
proposing, is just an explanation here, and if you guys all agree, I would advocate that it stays in from that standpoint, just as an awareness. I don't think Tom needs to proactively do anything, other than, again, when we're doing a full rescale road, or we're doing a sewer project, I think that needs to be part of it.
Let me ask you a question, just educate me. So I live off of Bushy Hill Road. My street's direct access to Bushy Hill Road.
Yep. But you don't have water and gas.
I'm sorry,
But you don't have water and gas.
I get water,
Yep.
inadequate, but I don't have gas, and I'm wondering, so I would assume that there's probably a gas line running down Bushy Hill.
Let's assume there is for this
Okay,
discussion.
so 4 years ago, whenever when Art Street was milled
Yep.
entirely, the entire length of it, first we replaced the cul-de-sacs, not cul-de-sacs, culverts, whatever they're called, right, and then they came through and milled. So would we have, in that instance, would the gas not have come unless the gas company had canvassed the entire neighborhood to say, do you want gas?
That's where the coordination would happen, but that's not a full-scale rebuild. What I'm saying is if we ended up doing the West Mountain Road sewer project, and we dig up the entirety of West Mountain and that end of town, we should be laying gas and sewer, or gas and water with that process.
So along the main trunk, let's call it.
But in your case, yes, there should be advanced coordination with the residents, with
Okay.
CNG, that's the time, if you're gonna cut the hole in the road and have CNG come out, that's the time for them to do it, because we've lowered their cost of installation, because the most expensive part, again, is the damn pavement.
But thank you. So the conversation tonight with the ARPA money and the sewers, half of our street is sewered, has sewers, half doesn't, and it's a loop.
Oh, wow.
It's a loop. So 40 years ago, one half, the McCoys, said we're gonna pay for the sewer, and the Hatfields, where I live, said no. So when we came through 5 years ago, a letter went out to all the residents, and they wanted it, and we again shot it down, even though there was 20 residents like myself who said, yes, I'd like it for the $10,000 or whatever it was, $12,000 over 10-year, 1% interest. So now I'm stuck with a $50,000 septic job, whatever I have to. It's just not thinking, so. But it was to a certain extent, that was coordinated by the town, and I applaud them for thinking, hey, we're ripping up your street, you're not gonna have another chance.
Tony and Tom have done an outstanding job with that, basically,
But I like sort of keeping the priority on the focus.
And I just think it's a small incremental cost that insulates us from future exposure and potentially provides a small scale benefit, so, at any rate. During that one.
So then the next one was cell service.
Well,
Okay.
so the cell service, we just asked for, I asked for an update on that because of the survey, and that we saw those emails from Sarah that this was improved, and you have to ask if you want this booster of some sort, and I don't know how many people know that and have seen it in one place. So I asked for it for Board of Selectmen. You guys would like to see it at Personnel Sub, that's okay, as long as we can promote that information out to other people. And are we done if that happens, is my question. Are we done talking about improving cell service, and how do we find out if people's cell service really has been improved?
So we can do another survey. I don't think we're ever gonna be done as the infrastructure continues to change, right? The topography of our town is challenging, right, with the radio. We have to have more than the average number of towers and repeaters and everything else because of the topography. Over here is one thing, but you can't get Bushy Hill because it's down in a valley and then up over and then Tooten Hill, so it's gonna continue to be problematic. But the short answer is yes, I think there's been incremental improvement, but we're not done.
I would argue that if we have solid service in major business districts and other populated areas, maybe it's not a strategic priority anymore, but we're always going to get complaints about it.
Okay, and then what about the broadband complaints? Does that still exist, and is that a priority on our list? Because it's not on there now. And I heard a lot about broadband last year, and I never had issues with broadband, so I have to say.
Anywhere there's a cable line, we're going to get Comcast.
But I'm just saying, even when Jackie was on the board, she was referencing downtown businesses that had issues with broadband. Is that really an issue downtown? Is that an issue in parts of the town? Is that something we should look at? I just want to put an aside here. I sat in on the CRAG policy meeting, and they had a review of the IIJA, the infrastructure bill, where the state's getting $6 billion. And there will be a lot of opportunities for us to use this money. They're going to send out the presentation. I'll send it out to everybody. And so some of this stuff, eventually we may be able to even get that money for if we don't use ARPA. Not to use ARPA to use this, but bridges and things like that. Broadband is also, and sewers are also in that bill. So it's going to be kind of, I guess, there's going to be, they said there's going to be a lot of opportunities for grants to apply to for all of this stuff. But I just wanted to know, is there a broadband issue or is there not a broadband issue? Because I hear that there is.
Or do we know?
Or do we not know?
Right.
Right.
I'm sure we know, right? I think we've gotten, it's been a predominant cell phone issue, and you've not been able to use the phone in certain places in downtown. I can tell you just from sitting here, it's improved dramatically.
Okay.
Because you used to not be able to make a phone call from this room, and now you
Oh,
can.
yeah, I have a lot of bars.
I think if you talk to Main Street Partnership, they would tell you that
There's a
there's
broadband.
an issue.
Okay, okay.
I don't work downtown.
It's an issue though too if we don't have fiber, right? The town has a small fiber connection, right? But Connecticut generally is woefully behind in this area on fiber connection, right? And it has to be brought up from the cities, and we're not that far out, but it's a geography challenge we have as well.
And one of the challenges that we have here in Connecticut, where some of our counterparts around the country have had great success in either improving the reliability of broadband or the speed of broadband, it's that when the private providers are sort of failing their community, usually in more suburban or rural areas, the municipality will decide to become their own utility, and they'll run their own infrastructure, and then like a sewer infrastructure system, the users pay a fee to the municipality. The challenge we have here in Connecticut is currently under PURA, which is the Public Utilities Regulation Commission. We are not allowed to do that. So that's where it's a little bit of a challenge for us, is that, again, where we've seen our colleagues have success is sort of when they say, okay, the private sector's failing us on this, we're just going to do it ourselves. We unfortunately don't have that option here. But we have heard, as Eric said from time to time, that folks will say that, that the broadband connection sometimes is unstable or not as reliable as it could be. In terms of cell service, what Main Street and Fire District and staff have been working on at this point in time is really taking a look at the existing infrastructure that the private companies have in town, just checking on what's malfunctioning, that should be working, and then also permitted work that was never completed and following up on that infrastructure. What we've talked about when that portion of the work is done, our traffic authority group has thought that it would be probably very prudent to take a look at. We get a map from this, I believe it's the Siting Council, if we request it, which we have requested, which will show, sort of gaps in coverage in the community. And then taking a look at what municipal infrastructure we do have to see if we can, encourage or entice the cell providers to say we have this light pole on this location, or we have, the DPW facility, or we have the golf clubhouse. Do you want to put a booster on our space? A lot of communities do that. They have their own towers, or buildings, and they rent out the space to the cell providers, so you get a little bit of income, but then you're also getting more reliable coverage in your community. It's not something we've done here, but we do sort of think that's once we get through that initial part I described, that's the next piece of the puzzle to really improve coverage, is to use our infrastructure as leverage to put the boosters and the
Like
little
the fire
towers.
towers, right? Simsbury Farms,
Exactly.
one of the worst areas in town.
Simsbury Farms would be good.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, they are aren't they finally getting their fiber up in the farm?
Yes, they are.
We're trying to do that for 10 years
Yes.
now.
So so as a priority under infrastructure, is mirror becoming a bigger priority for us under infrastructure?
We have such a small and low risk because of how we have private subscription
Okay.
service. I mean, it's certainly something we could keep an eye on, continue to monitor. We will have to
It's
continue
just the
working
normal
on
course
it.
of business kind of,
I mean, we're not putting the trash in
I think
somewhere.
it's
No, I
a
know.
more normal course of business, but
just to make like, if we have to make any decisions.
I just don't know about it.
No, I don't know, I'm just talking,
Yeah, no,
we
I
talk
know.
about it so much.
Well, I think we talk, excuse me, I'm digesting the concept of talking about mirror, because ultimately, it does affect the residents in the sense that their bills are going,
Yeah.
the cost is going to go up significantly. And I think there may be a misunderstanding that we're a participant in that cost structure. And
So we are directly, we decided, so, right?
yes.
we do, well, yes, but we don't necessarily, we aren't given, it's not us who decides, it's given the haulers also establish which list that they're going to potentially use for, or bring forward to us, correct?
Not for where the haulers have to bring their trash. And this was something that was from about 30 plus years ago, back when Mira was,
Oh, I thought they could select like 5, and then those 5 come to us.
No,
No, it's
they're required to
local
dump what we signed.
Okay.
So what Mira, or the previous iteration of Mira, had most of the communities sign on to was what they call like solid waste ordinance or flow control ordinance. So we actually have an ordinance on the books right now that requires the private haulers, whomever we have as private haulers, they're required to flow the waste to Mira. So that's definitely something Tom Roy's been looking into, and us and Bob D, because there are a few communities with this Mira crisis, very large communities, they don't have subscription service, it is part of their tax base, but they've done RFPs and they've decided to use a different private facility to bring the trash, to bring the recyclables to. The legal question that we're sort of trying to work through now with Bob is, how are they doing that? Are they repealing their ordinances, their flow control ordinances? We're not quite sure. This is kind of a very emerging area, so.
Ultimately, though, if mirror is dissolved,
We have to sign a new contract.
because, so if mirror is dissolved, because there is nothing for them to do for us, isn't it ultimately then the private haulers who look to source where they're gonna bring the trash to?
No, we have a contract with Mira that comes before this board. We decided we went with Mira. We could have gone with someone else. And we decided based on the cost of recycling, which I think was 0 or very low. Overall, our combined tip fee was one of the best with the way we went with Mira. We could have gone with another hauler, but we would have had to have the haulers pay per ton for recycling. We used to get a rebate, and that used to fund a lot of the clean energy stuff around here, because when they used to pay us for recycling, now that's no longer the case. But when we last did our renewal, we were still able to negotiate or take advantage of the Mira contract, which had, I think it was a slightly higher trash side, but it was ultimately lower on the recycling, so the blended tip fee was low. Mira dissolves, we have to contract with another hauler, with another facility, and then those haulers are bound, again, as Maria just said, by that facility, whatever the number is that we contract for. The cost is going up. So whether it be Mira that survives, or the continuing entity, or another entity, the cost to our haulers is going up, therefore they're going to pass that on to the residents. And there's essentially nothing anybody can do about it.
Yeah.
But for the state or the feds to come in and pump a bunch of money into that facility, but then somebody's got to pay for it.
All right, and I'm misunderstanding, isn't Mirror essentially that facility?
Yes, but again,
Yes.
it's a contractual, it's an entity that we contracted with where our flow goes. We could have gone to, what's the other one?
Oh, there's a couple of private ones, like Murphy Road and
Yeah, we
Hartford,
could've gone to
and
Murphy
a few
Road
others
instead.
in the region.
But the rate wasn't as good on a blended basis because we had to pay more for recycling to dispose of it there.
So we're just saying, are we saying it's not something it's a priority, but it's not something we need to out there right now, we're just trying to understand our role, but should we?
There's nothing strategically we can.
Yeah, so let's move on, right?
Yes.
Like, that's
But it's good that we know.
Yeah, that was what I'm trying to get to.
I mean, I think
No,
it's good
so-
to continue to know about it,
Yes. we
because
have
we're
to.
going, people are gonna come to us and say, why is my cost of my
Yeah.
trash going up?
Yeah, definitely.
And we're gonna blame Lamont for that.
We had a lot of, so how about the item that keeps coming up, that we keep seeing is the Station Street, the parking lot at Eno,
The two-way.
you know, all that stuff, that's, people have been talking about that for a long time.
Yeah, so we think that that particular project is very worthy. We think it'd be a really good candidate for a STEAP grant.
Yeah, right.
We're just waiting for another round of STEAP funding to be opened up. Again, we really do think that that would be sort of a very ideal thing. As part of that grant, what we were envisioning was repositioning Station Street to be a two-way.
Right.
And then also as part of that would be reconfiguring the sidewalk, the parking lot, you know, so we're really trying to do that work together, as well as some parking improvements. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, the road right in front of True Value. Doing some on-street improvements, so really kind of taking that area, not only, you know, reconverting that to a two-way street, which is so much better for economic development, businesses than one way, but also fixing the parking at the same time. So we're just waiting for another round of
So
STEAP
do we-
grant funding to open up.
Do we put that as a priority, that as soon as the STEAP grant is available, that we apply for it?
I think we could.
So it's a priority in the sense that we continue to monitor, you know, we continue to make
With
the
that,
staff in front of mind to continue to look for it.
And also pay attention to the IIJA grants that are gonna come out for the infrastructure bill, because they're saying there's gonna be a lot of money that we can apply for.
And staff had done some preliminary work on this, just to even get a sense if we thought that we could get enough road width to convert it back to two-way, and we do think we can convert it back to two-way. It just does require a little bit of like the reconfiguration of the sidewalk and the parking lot. And it was done a long time ago when we looked into it, did some research. I think the conversion happened in the 60s, which was also a very common time. There's this sort of, you know, planning school of thought of one way, get people in and out faster, and right, we later learned that wasn't maybe such a good idea in many cases. So it's sort of re-correcting that work that happened in the 1960s.
So I have an infrastructure question. I don't know if it's an infrastructure question or if it's a Tom Roy question. So Nod Road, you know, there's a lot of development on there, not to even mention the gun range, but the Talcott Mountain Collective, the disc golf. I got a call from the new owner of
Kevin.
Tower Ridge, yeah. And I told him to call Tom Hazel, because they're planning to do a lot of stuff out there, but one of the things he asked about was you know, the parking's across the street, and they really have a lot of people out there. And he goes, who would I see about adding one of our crosswalks? Like, right, like, is that infrastructure?
Yeah, it is. And we have been discussing that recently with our traffic authority group and with the new owner. And we're looking at some different traffic calming options for
Okay.
that road. One that we think is probably the best option to pursue is line striping of the road.
Mhm.
And you can make the road more narrow with the lines. And by making the road more narrow, you therefore cause traffic calming. So that's sort of an example of an idea that we've had to try and help calm the traffic. You know, we repaved it recently, and often this will happen is that once we, you know, repave a stretch, and if it's a stretch that's, you know, kind of a long stretch and well traveled, we also happen to see speeds pick up when the road is in good condition. So I think that's contributing a little bit to some of the speed we're seeing there. But we are in touch with them, and the chief and, you know, Tom Roy and our traffic authority group are looking at some traffic calming measures for that area.
We should leave that one on the list too, because we applied for a safety grant where we actually were gonna swap the parking lot for the road. Years ago, we tried that, it was through the police department.
But kind of soften the,
Well, that's the most dangerous,
yeah, that's soften that corner.
that's the most dangerous corner in town, or at least it was at the time, according to the list of our number of accidents. So we were gonna actually, they were gonna give us the parking lot, we were gonna give them the road, and they would rebuild their parking lot, we would actually straighten rid of, get rid of that corner that goes like this.
Does
What
any-
was the whole idea?
Just gotta ask people, does anybody remember how the road used to go straight into a house, and then you used to have to go this way and then all the
That
way
was
back?
down, but that was down. the
Yeah, I
road.
know, but people that really was like that, right? Like,
Yeah, but that was down, again, that was
Yeah,
way.
well, yeah, no, I know, but I always wonder if I imagined that, because
Same thing
right
over
at this
Blue-
house.
same thing over Bluefield.
Yeah, close
by-
to-
by
yeah,
the
it's an Avon.
Tumble Ridge, Tumblebrook maintenance shed, you know, the
Yeah.
same thing happened there, but.
Yeah,
So that's an
yeah.
interesting
My
concept.
my suggestion would be to bring that goal just up a level and not specify Nod Road, but
Yeah,
just
traffic.
supporting traffic calming measures and other
Yeah,
public safety
definitely.
measures
Right.
to keep our roads and pedestrians safe.
Well,
Yeah.
that's, and that goes also to work counter to the request from the police commission, right, Eric? Because
It
if
would
they're
tie
asking
into
for
that.
a lot of traffic, if we have traffic calming things, may offset the need for.
I was going to say, thank you, Eric, for bringing it up, because we are going to talk a little bit about that with you all in the upcoming budget workshop and our capital planning. We had really good success with our traffic calming study and pilot project, and then ultimately the permanent reconfiguration over on Notch Road. And we do have, again, our traffic authority group, we do have right now what we call sort of a short list of potential intersections that we think could either benefit from traffic calming and or road configuration. It generally requires, a small amount of design work and study. We have pilot measures and then permanent measures. And we really do think that overall, right, that's going to help improve a lot of the traffic issues we're having. Again, so we do have, a small list of those, and we think it would be really wise that now that we've done one, like, let's continue to work on those intersections and stretches of road that we know are problematic. So thank you, everybody, for bringing that up, and we'll be talking some more about that.
Great.
East Lee Todd Street, River Road.
Yes, I know.
Or, one other question on that. Are the pillars infrastructure?
Yes, and again, those,
We already have a plan for
correct.
this, right?
Yes, that's correct, for the upcoming year in the CNR budget.
For the, using the 350th money for the Terrafil?
Yeah.
So that went, did that got added to the CM?
Well, we have two in the
Yeah.
CNR plan already for the upcoming year.
Okay.
Which ones?
So we have two that need to be replaced still. We had one of the welcome signs over by the Stop and Shop that got taken out a while back by a
Yeah.
tree, and
Okay.
just like the posts are left. So that one we really need to replace because there's nothing there.
Yep.
And then we still have one wooden sign over on, like, as you're coming into Simsbury from Granby, that one needs to be replaced. So those were the two existing that we knew needed to be replaced that we had programmed in the CNR for the upcoming year. But then this idea of the Terrafil one, coming into being, we would just add to that CNR project for the upcoming year with the 350 funds paying for the third pillar.
Would
Okay,
that
so,
one be, are they looking for like, welcome to the village of Terrafil? or
No, they're-
welcome to
they're
Simsbury?
Just like the
Same
stone
thing.
welcome to
They're looking for
Simsbury.
two
Same,
things.
essentially
Yeah.
contiguous with the rest.
they're looking for two. They're looking for one down when you come into town because you don't know that you're in Simsbury when you come in there. And then this one isn't part of our plan, but they were also thinking of having one up near Governor's Bridge on that little island, welcome to the village of Terrafil, because you're already in Simsbury, so you're just, but the one by the main coming in on 189, whatever, nobody knows where they are, I don't think, when you come in.
What's really interesting about that little island in Terrafil, it's actually privately owned land.
Really?
Yeah.
Like the tree on it in the center?
Yes, it's privately owned land, and one of the challenges in Terrafil, and again, we'll figure out a solution and we'll make it work, but there are challenges just with, there are a lot of state roads that go through the major entryways, so we'll just most likely have to work out if we put it on a state road, working out an easement with the state, or if we wanted to do something on that little island, we would have to work with the
Should
folks
have
that own
done
it.
Probably easier to get an easement from an individual.
Had all that equipment up there doing the sidewalks, because it was time to do it. Coordination. So then under the infrastructure, what about this, just, I want to, what is, so to educate me, the proposed visual of the north end, so it's done, and what are we doing with it?
Yeah, we can definitely circulate it. I'm sorry, I know Tom Roy has had the renderings. We can definitely circulate it to the group.
What's going to be a presentation up there? No, but I'm saying, like, what is it, so do we use, are we sending it out to, like, market real estate up there to development, is Main Street utilize it as a tool? That's, when we do something like, is it for just the residents up there to say, hey, this is what it could be, or we intend, so next time we put something like that up there, I can understand what it's.
That's okay. And actually, Chris, I don't know if you remember, but the rendering was your idea last time, and my recollection was.
Yeah, but what are we doing with it?
Yes, and I think it
It's
was.
done.
When you want done with it.
No, but
Is
this
it
is
like
really-
posted on a website, and like, it's like, we're winning an award for it? Like, what
The
are we
idea was
doing?
to give it to EDC and Main Street
Yeah,
and
okay.
Chamber and folks to socialize it as, much like the charrette we did, right?
Yes, but the
Yeah, the
thing is,
shred that-
and the nice thing is, right, we have the sidewalk grant, and we got awarded the sidewalk grant. So that was, I think, a big piece of sort of that north end and the north end visioning and the rendering. And so again, it was sort of, I think, if I recall, you sort of had a vision like, wow, there's so much potential there. Once this infrastructure is going to be in, like, what could it be? What could it look
Right, like I said, the next time I ask for it, you know, what are we gonna, so these people say, are we gonna, do we have the next vision for it? Where is the next place?
Yes, and we did the renderings as part of the sidewalk grant and as part of that project, and I'm really excited about that grant, so.
Oh, that would be a great idea, that rendering of the Firetown sidewalk.
Sidewalks?
Somebody write
Oh,
down
yeah,
what
that
he
would
asked
be
for us.
cool.
What do you want
I
to do?
wish we had a
with it?
time
Because
sidewalk.
Because I think if it was posted up on the web, if you put that up, if you put something like that up on the website, the town website, and it's the first thing you see, it says, look what's coming.
I agree. No,
I like the idea.
I agree. It builds momentum, it builds
Yeah.
excitement, and again, I think it gives.
Because someone goes there someone indirectly goes to the website to look, oh, what's my tax bill? And they see that, oh, look, we're doing something. You know?
That's a great suggestion.
Yep, you're right.
Same thing with that north end thing, put it up there.
What was it first, what did you say before the north end? Oh, the Firetown and the
I'm
north
just saying
end.
anything that we're doing.
Well, that comes under, so, it's somewhere tonight, I wanna make sure we have time for two topics that I find very important, and I don't know if anybody else does in this group, I hope they do. One is the fostering of an engaged and high-quality workforce, and, you know, it's gonna be probably a little hard discussion, but there's things that I think that we need to talk about as far as our town staff and making sure we retain employees. And then also the transparency and communications of just things that you just mentioned. These things are happening, people need to know about them out in the public. Sometimes, you know, I know you guys have so much on your plate, but sometimes we may not hear about these things, and there's certain things I feel like I would want to hear more of and opt more for less. So those are just two topics I want to make sure we get to tonight and have a lot of time for. So,
Yeah, so
I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but
Somebody asked me about Latimer Lane, and I said, I don't know. I don't even know where to look for the pictures. You know, so that's like a, you know, again, the website I don't know, but if, I don't know how, if we have the ability to upload stuff, but that's where you put it.
Board of Ed's got it.
But you gotta go to the Board of Ed website, unless you're a kid in school, if you were a taxpayer, you're only gonna go to
Look, I'm
the.
not pouring cold water on this, but if you put it here, 5 people are gonna love it, 10 people are gonna go, I didn't see it. Put it over here, 5 of those 10 people are gonna love it, the other 10 are gonna be pissed off you moved it from the other place.
I'm saying
do
both.
they have a little model that we could
Both.
put in the lobby?
Both
I mean,
places.
you could put the Goodyear blimp up with it, Chris, and half the town will have no idea that it was there. I'm not saying don't try, I'm just saying you're trying to solve the impossible problem.
I'm not,
Spell it.
I'll stop on this though, but I don't think there's a cost involved with putting it in both places. That's all.
I'm fine.
And to Chris's point, it would take a huge amount of effort just to, I mean, I agree, I think it is difficult to find renderings and projects that we're being worked on.
It is? I have trouble finding on our website, trying to find what happened on what agenda to find where it
Guys, I
happened.
agree, I'm not advocating this, my only problem is though, is that when you go to the town website, if you have 15 renderings, and you're trying to find the budget stuff, and you're trying to find your tax bill, it gets overwhelming, and again,
Maybe we
I
need to
agree we need to
redesign
have, I'm just saying, it all sounds good, but when you put it out there and you try to do it, it's a challenge to make it work the way we all draw it, because it changes constantly, and what everybody's going there for. We have to serve, I think I'm not pouring cold water on it, but we have licenses, we've got permits, we've got zoning, we've got schools, we've got all of this stuff, and you have to funnel it to some extent, because you have so many different constituents going to one place to start. And if we try to put it all front and center, do we actually make the problem worse?
Do we hire a web
Well,
designer?
didn't we also, I mean, like the trail, the walking trail, has the storybook walk and different things. You know, could we put something out maybe in some of those of the rendering of what Latimer will look like, you know, just temporary.
Like the library, right?
Or, yeah.
I love it, yeah. Again, not trying to pour cold water on it, but it's just, we have so much that we have to deliver to the public. It's a perpetual challenge.
So we're really talking about transparency and community, we're talking about communications right now, so let's talk about that. Because from a technology perspective, I find it really hard to navigate. And I know Melissa does a lot of the website stuff, so it's like part of your job. Was there ever conversation to hire somebody as a part-time or something
We had a part-time communications person.
to manage the website?
Yeah,
But
Stephanie
that
Reed.
was, yeah, Stephanie, that was
Reed,
part of,
yeah.
it was before my time here, but there was a part-time person in the first select person's office. And I don't know what year it was done away with, but,
She
then it
left
was
and
sort of
it was,
folded into my
There wasn't
position.
a bill.
yeah, she left and it was never filled, yeah,
Yeah.
that was a while ago.
Yeah, we don't have like a traditional webmaster that all companies have right now because we don't have the IT staff, nor do we have, communications. Melissa does a lot of that under her other job duties. We have decentralized content management right now, meaning that each department is responsible for making updates. To do, something like this and to, have our website be maybe a little more fresh and robust, would most likely, again, require some sort of, staffing
Yeah.
related to the webmaster, versus, a project that we might want to do in terms of like a complete, like if we want to do a complete overhaul, redesign of the website, that typically we would use a vendor, but it would still require, IT staff time and, the different departments to help with that as well. So it's sort of two different, either sort of like a revamp would be a capital project, versus sort of the ongoing needs if we wanted it to maybe look a little more uniform, again, be more fresh, we would really probably need a webmaster.
I mean,
I
it seems
think-
like, I was just gonna say, it seems like what happens is even if you revamp a website, and I've run into this at different organizations I've been involved in, if you don't have someone that is responsible for keeping the content fresh, it just goes stale because it takes a ton of time to keep it updated, and you really, I understand right now, like by decentralizing it kind of puts it on the departments to check in and keep it up, but I think that there's no point in revamping it if you aren't gonna have the resources to
But is that a
maintain
place where
it.
we should have resources? I mean, I don't
So
know.
what I
That's a
wanted-
0.5% increase in your budget, if you want to staff it. I mean, that's the reality, it's a $75,000 position, right, or 60, whatever it is, it's almost a 0.5% of the course
Well,
of the
does it,
budget.
right, I guess you can
But I
talk.
just wanted to, I think there's a tremendous value in also communication is so decentralized between, everybody's got their own, every department and committee has their own Facebook page.
Yeah.
And in a larger organization with more resources, there would be a single office or person that's really coordinating all of these things in the messages. Having said that, when I look at all of our needs and our priorities, I don't know if that for me, if that would come out as a top thing to it, if we're gonna add it.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my point, if it's 75,000, I mean, I don't want to have a 0.5 of our budget increase chewed up in a communication position.
Okay, well,
But if it ever was, it would be a good one to think about being shared between us and DOE.
Right.
well, it's just that, if we're not hearing people saying, I can't find this, or where is this information, or I don't know how to get to this, or I'm finding old meeting minutes, I can't, I mean, it might just be us that's doing it and having the issue. So, it's just.
I think you're pointing to an age-old problem.
Yeah, I know.
And it goes back to how do we prioritize it amongst everything else out there.
And we I don't say buy, but we subscribe to or follow some sort of municipal website design, right? At least it's the -ct.gov thing, right?
Yeah, this is dramatically improved.
Do you mean just the template of it?
Yeah,
It's
it's-
Civic Plus, it's, you'll see a lot of other towns with sort of the
But
same
it's not,
build-out.
but there are other, like West Hartford has a different, they don't necessarily subscribe to the Civic, whatever, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
it's
You're saying the
different.
platform's different?
Yeah, I don't know,
Yeah.
I can hardly
They might have
turn my
their
phone
own
on, so I don't know what you're
person,
talking about.
right?
The
Because
terminology
they're a bigger
standpoint.
town and they have a much bigger,
So we're
constituency.
kind of like, we're buying something out of a box.
Right. Right.
okay.
Wendy, how do you feel talking about the first goal you brought up? There's more to it.
Fostering and engaged, and yes, I would love to talk about that. Should you want me to start talking about it? I have a lot to talk about, and it's not easy to hear some of it. So I know in here we have a lot of the prior goals for, I'm trying to find it, for high quality was, a lot of it was division head meetings and executive coaching and training and stuff like that. But I kind of want to talk about just the general morale through town hall. Like, A, is the morale in town hall good or not good? I've heard things from people. So that might lead into, do we do a townwide, like when you work in a corporation, you do a survey that gets down to rating your boss and your boss's boss and all that kind of stuff. Have we ever done an employee level survey? You know, pick an outside vendor to come in and do that so we can look at the results and see where there might be issues with the department, where there's not issues, that kind of stuff. So that's one question. Have we ever done that?
I personally went through a 360 review process in summer of 2020.
With your direct reports though,
And
correct?
division heads. So it was a group of almost 30 people.
Okay,
We had
yeah.
all but one person participate. There were definitely some takeaways for me in there, but overall, staff, and Melissa has seen it, I think that concur, and I have
Yeah.
shared it with the board, but overall, our department head team, our division head team, as well as my other direct reports, I think generally it was very, very, very positive, but we have not done that with our frontline staff.
Okay, so, and maybe you shared that with me back, I asked about this,
I
probably.
shared it with
Maybe
the
you
board
could
at the
share,
time.
we could share it with the new
For the new members,
people, right?
absolutely, absolutely. I think it was very helpful. I mean, like I said, there were definitely, I think, for me as a leader, a few takeaways for me in there that, were good. And I really encourage people, I said it was anonymous, and I really encourage people to participate in it because this is going to only help me to continue to better support them, for them to grow. That was really the intent of that, of that exercise. But generally speaking, again, I think our leadership team, our division heads, are feeling supported. That definitely came through.
Okay, so I'm saying to go down a level, I think is what I'm saying, so.
So engage frontline staff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, this leads into the whole, again, because we just lost the department head, we've lost 2 department heads this year. And, I'd like to make sure that we don't lose anybody else, that we retain the staff that we have, because it only hurts, and we always say it's not our job, but we're here for the best interests of Simsbury. So the best interest of Simsbury is to make sure we have the best staff and team in town hall, spending the town's money to do their job, right? And so that should be a priority to us. I don't want to talk to myself, but.
100%,
Can I just change what you said though, that, there's a natural flow of retention and workforce, and this is one of the most challenging job environments I think we've ever all been in. And I'm not saying that it's, losing folks is a reality of any workforce, right? And there's situations to it. I think we need to have a good structure in place.
Okay.
And the goal of retaining people for the sake of retaining them it should be an engaged workforce that finds value in coming and contributing to this community. And if they choose to stay here, that's awesome, but we do our part to provide an environment where they feel safe, they feel valued, they feel trusted. Because again, I think the retention piece is, okay, we'll just up everybody's salary and give them a bunch more vacation and make it kumbaya, but there's more to it than that side. And again, we're not gonna be the best employer from a salary standpoint. We're not necessarily gonna be the best employer from a benefit standpoint because we have contracts and pressure and everything else. But I think we can control, to some extent, the tone, which I think is the point of what you're bringing up, right? Which is people want to be part of this community, and I think we have very much talked about, I think we talked about 2 years ago, right, is we want to be a premier employer. We want people to want to work here.
We do.
So I think this does flow. Do you have the retention numbers, or the turnover numbers?
We can definitely pull those.
One suggestion could be to make a goal, something around wanting to be striving to be a great employer. And then the specifics of how to achieve that would be part of personnel.
Well, go
I
ahead.
have a couple of thoughts and questions. One, do we skip interviews? Because that's something that can be really great for, a work environment and really understanding what different employees, what they're thinking, and also it's also good at allowing them to get to know, to get to know people at different levels better. So, I would suggest that we maybe implement that. It doesn't cost anything. It's just something that we set up. Also, what is our exit interview policy? What does that look like?
Sure. So typically when we have a person leaving, they will have a meeting with our HR coordinator to go over exit paperwork, share any insights they want. Because we are a public employer, anything we write down is foilable. And oftentimes people will share very personal reasons for us. You know, I'm relocating because I'm getting remarried. I'm leaving because I have an elderly parent with failing health. I mean, those are certainly things that are very private to people. If we write any of that down, it's foiable. So we have made a decision that we, you know, we'll talk with folks, but we generally, as part of an exit interview, we do not report it because, again, often when people choose to leave, they're choosing to leave for very personal reasons. And, you know, those are just things, again, yes, we're public employees, but in terms of, you know, knowing about people's medical situations,
Yeah, we get
medical
it.
situations.
Okay.
Well, what about,
Very careful about
changing to a different angle, what if someone wants one and wants it documented and it's more, yes, you might get disgruntled people, right?
They can handle some.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think though, I think there should
It may
be,
have.
I think an exit interview should be part of our policy. I mean, you can learn so much for those as well. It allows you to see patterns. And, you know, the policy shouldn't be if you want an exit interview, you have one. It should be, this is when your exit interview is, and you can opt out. So if it's for a very personal reason, opt out. But I think that should be the policy because it allows, I just think it would allow us to see patterns in past people, why they left, what were their reasoning, how they felt about the work environment. I think they're important to do.
I think this is, we could philosophically talk about this forever. I think we just need to be, you know, here's Joe with the camera. We need to, you know, we put ourselves in a we have the stewards, we have the responsibility to be the stewards of this town, right?
Yeah.
But just, you know, we have to take action on things, and it becomes something that we may not be experts in. And once it gets recorded, then we have, and I think the things that are of grave concern likely have action taken on them. But, you know, I don't know that we're solving any big, you know, we'd be solving any great concern that we have right now by putting a hard, firm process in for an exit interview. I hope that we have the culture whereby an exit interview takes place informally between the manager and the candidate, whichever.
But if there's an issue, let's just say, where does a person go? We had this conversation when we did the harassment policy. I keep bringing this one up. If somebody was suffering from harassment at work, originally it went to personnel head or the HR director, which is Maria. If you had an issue, somebody had an issue with harassment with Maria, you had no recourse. And we added that you could go to, was it the first selectman? We did this, or the board of selectmen. We added another layer there so that somebody could go somewhere, you know. And
I'd also like to say that following some challenges we had with our workplace, with a staff member who had been harassing folks, we did not have a good anti-harassment policy when we came here. We did not have.
I remember, you took action.
I brought that to you proactively because I felt it was very important for our organization to have those good tools in place.
You put them in place, yes.
Yes, and we put them in
The web
place.
policy, the whole, there's a lot of it going on. I think there's a way to solve this that gets at everybody. Because I think Maria is right in that we've had unfortunate incidents where residents have chosen to go acquire information that they shouldn't have about people's personal health situations and treatment plans and otherwise, and they've chosen to speak about them on TV and otherwise. And I think we do as an employer have an obligation to do our best to try to protect employees from those situations where their treatments or their personal challenges, mental health or otherwise, have no business being on TV, with the need to acquire information that's organizationally impacting, as Heather's getting at. So perhaps the middle ground is a questionnaire where it has nothing to do with personal information or otherwise, and it's optional for the employee, but it's always given to say, hey, look, share concern, you know, and again, it's not just fishing for bad things, it should be organizationally wide. What went well, what could be better? Perception of benefits, perception of role, engagement, it should be wide ranging.
I think that's a great idea.
And again, perhaps that's the middle ground, and if they, to your point, if they choose to disclose their personal reasons, they do so knowing that it's written down and it's a public document.
Right.
But there's no requirement to do so, and then it takes the burden off of town staff to proactively ask and decide whether to write down or not. And perhaps that's the way to do it. And then that, document is kept in a personnel file, and obviously, because I think Heather's point of overall trends and, I think we all do want to know. If there's a problem in a particular area, we certainly all want to know it, right? But you have to balance that with information that shouldn't be out in the public space about people's personal health situations or family, right?
Well, and also, as a flip side, for something we're doing great, it's good to know as well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, let's do more of it.
we wouldn't want to make a change in something
Right.
that's working really well, for a reason we don't
Love the
realize,
Monday late
inadvertently.
schedule, love having a half day on Friday.
I-
One of the best reasons, that kind of stuff might.
You may get into Heather's idea of the skip level meetings, you may get, well ahead of time, you may get in front of things that never actually have to end up on that questionnaire, right? So that's,
Well, just essentially, because if you have the questionnaire, then this person's leaving.
the person's leaving,
Right.
hopefully.
Yeah,
But
skip level.
but hopefully the person is leaving because they got a better opportunity.
Right.
Ultimately, that's the only reason why I want anybody to leave here, because they got a better opportunity based on compensation, location, roles and responsibilities, or whatever. That's the only reason why anybody should ultimately leave here.
So, is that fair?
Yeah, and I can share with you, we can put it back out there. The reason we stopped offering it is because we would tell employees, we can't keep this confidential. Whatever you put down here, whatever notes I take will be disclosable, and they would all just say, no, I don't want to do it.
Yeah, but a conversation, it's not though.
Right, correct, just a
Conversation is not
Yeah.
required. There's
Correct.
something that you have to document
That's
that
correct.
conversation.
That's
Well,
correct.
I guess
So
what I'm
that's back to the
suggesting,
skip level.
what I'm suggesting though is the middle ground is come up with a questionnaire that again is a reasonable employment questionnaire overall versus, again, I understand the point of the question, but I think that's a little more daunting for an employee, I think, to answer right on the spot of, hey, look, this is the questionnaire as part of your exit package. Please fill it out and submit it here. And it goes to you and Eric or whatever, copy to the personnel, wherever it goes, right? And again, they can think about it. And again, it's not the in the moment, hey, by the way, everything's gonna be out in the public space, which again, I wouldn't want that either. I absolutely agree with you. But if they see the questions that they're far ranging and organizationally enhancing, and again, also if there's a problem, it might take some of the fear and anxiety out of the answer. I guess is where I'm going with that.
So let me ask a question on top of that. Is there a role for a personnel subcommittee in here? Because we're also responsible for personnel. Like, how do we know if there is an issue?
So I think we need to be careful with what we just said. We are responsible for personnel. We
Okay,
have a
we're-
limited role in
But what is our-
part of personnel.
So I know that it's defined somewhere, but I would like to know exactly
That's
what,
the charter, yeah.
everything defines our role completely in there?
In the charter, I would say two key items that are relevant here is that the town manager is designated as the HR director,
Yeah.
so I'm not often in the day-to-day. We have a very talented HR professional, Eric Bohms, who does a lot of the day-to-day. Melissa does some day-to-day. Tom Fitzgerald does some day-to-day. I certainly am involved with more complex, medical leave issues, ADA issues, FMLA issues, and ultimately, I am the decision maker at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So the charter is very clear about that. The charter is also, in my opinion, very clear that board members do not direct staff, that the town manager directs staff. So I think when it comes to sort of those HR matters, I do think the charter is fairly clear on that.
So short of us passing policy legislatively, which I wouldn't recommend because I don't think that falls into this space, I think we should talk about the overall beginning, which is fostering that inclusive, diverse, engaged workforce. And that's where then, Maria, you get your goals from us, that this is what we expect. And again, I think we've made it very clear here that we would like you to take a look at how we do the exit process. But I mean, short of legislative action, we can't.
But it will be in your goal, in Maria's goals, right? That these are standards that we
So they're,
not just the goals that are here, but as far as employee
I mean, we can definitely take a look at
morale
this.
and.
Again, because again, at a staff level, our office did take a look at this a few years ago because, employees, former employees were very upset when they learned that things that they shared were disclosable. As again, notes have been taken, things have been written down, and so that's when we began disclosing to folks, like, we just want to make sure that you're aware, so that's when we went to more conversational nature. So we did switch that practice where we went from, when we do our exit process, we went from writing things down to just having conversations with people. And again, that was because of what we had experienced here. I think in general, and again, for, folks who are newer to our board, I think what we're looking for in our workforce are people who are very passionate about public service. Especially during in the pandemic, we're seeing in our field, people are leaving our profession in droves because it has been exhausting, mentally, physically, families threatened. It's been really hard to do the type of work we do during the pandemic. So when people find a love for public service like we have, and this is again the qualities we're looking for in people, they bring that to their work every day. And even when you're having a challenging time like the pandemic, right, you want staff who have that passion for public service. And our philosophy has been, we don't want to settle, right? We want to bring the talented, best people that we can find to our positions. And I'll be candid, when I first got here, I had a conversation with some of our union leadership. And we're like, well, somebody will come here, like somebody will settle for that. And I said, I don't want just somebody. We want to find, the best, the brightest, the most passionate about public service. So I think we've really changed our model of recruitment over the last 4 years, right? We're looking for people who have those qualities, where they have that passion for public service. They have a passion for their work. It's not just a job, it's a vocation. And so those are a lot of qualities we look for. Just quickly, since, talk about turnover, et cetera, also what we're seeing in our field, there are real shortages, particularly in the specialized areas. There aren't enough town managers right now. There aren't enough assessors, building officials, planning directors, civil engineers. So it really is creating a real shortage. What we're also finding, I'm sure you guys who are in the private sector see this as well, millennials don't come and work for a place for 20, 25, 30 years. They come, they stay for 3 or 4 years, maybe they change fields completely. You mentioned, we had a department head who left. She didn't leave to go to another town. She left to take a completely different job in the private sector. So this is something, right, it's a new reality for us with millennials. They don't come and stay. Something else, we are a relatively small organization. I have had conversations and heart-to-hearts with staff members who are looking for that next step. They want to supervise people. They want more responsibility. I can't always offer that for them here because we're so small. And so when I see an opportunity for them in a nearby community that I know is going to be the best for them, I know selfishly I don't want to lose them if it's a talented person, but I also want the best for them personally and professionally. And if that's to take that next opportunity somewhere else, then that's great. And maybe someday they're going to come back to us, and that's what we hope for, right? We want to develop them to be the best that they can be, take the opportunities that are going to help them grow, and maybe someday we reconnect with them. I think Tom Tyberski is a really wonderful example of that. He's somebody who had to leave to grow, and then he came back to us, and he's fabulous. We love him. So, I think I just really want to put that sort of general philosophy out there within the context of this conversation.
So, and when you go, just revisiting when you initially said like a survey, I would caution the concept of a survey to the broader. Just let's be prepared. Let's make sure that we have the assets internally to be able to digest and effectively work with that. Just saying it because that can come at a cost. So you talked about
the personnel subcommittee.
The three of us work for
I've done many
multi-billion-dollar companies, and we've got internal CHROs with staffing, so and talent management teams. So it's a different, not always easy to
Engagement surveys of engagement surveys.
I know, I've done my share, and you don't know who, if it's under 5 people, you can figure out who it is or something.
But even beyond that.
But I'm just saying, we don't want to do it without being able to do something that's meaningful.
So let me ask a question. How do you, Melissa, and Maria feel that the morale is in town hall?
I don't think
that's not a valid question?
Yeah,
Goals and strategic.
I don't think
Okay, I'm just asking.
We take 5, I drink a lot of water.
Yeah.
Sure. I won't ask that.
And I would also just like to say,
Let's take 5.
I would just like to say though, we have a very large workforce on many work sites. The amount of employees that work in this building on this floor of town hall is less than 30, and we have over 150 full-time employees. And with our part-timers during seasonal periods, we have over 400. And we have, goodness, I'm going to lose track of my count right now, but in terms of work sites, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5 different work sites. So it's, our workforce isn't just the people who work in this building.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty broad.
It's a broad organization.
Seriously,
Yeah, you can go.
So to help the group, this is not talking about specific items, but I'm going to use it, Sean here. The item under transportation, I was thinking about this. Advocate for improvements in DOT timing of lights on Hot Meadow Street. Forget the actual project, but when it's something that has to do with DOT, do we have, that's Tom Roy's is the first point of contact. He's liaison, right? He's the individual.
It depends. Sometimes it's Jeff as our town engineer.
Okay.
Sometimes
Okay.
it's Tom Roy, but they both have strong contacts with DOT.
And do we have, I guess it all relates back to safety at the end of the day. Do we have the ability internally here, whether it's Tom or Jeff in general, to or authority or skill sets, training, whichever, to present, to find, to identify a problem area, we talked about it earlier, and actually present the wholesale solution right to the DOT and potentially have them like stamp it, or does it ultimately have to go through, a complete formal process by them? Is there like a streamline, like I would think in this day and age?
Like, can you serve it up to them
Yeah.
so that you can get their buy-in quickly?
Yeah, sometimes we do try that. So for example, with the town hall project, we've done some design work, we've paid for that, we've suggested options for realigning the entryway and the crosswalks. They told us no. There is a formal review process at DOT when we do like sort of feedback on a design or a concept. The challenge we have down here at the Weetog intersection, sort of off of the bridge, that area, that is just a very complex intersection, and there was a large corridor study done like a one time ago. We have asked them for a refresh of that study. I think the last time when they had looked at a reconfiguration of that intersection, it was something like it was like a $17 million price tag, and that was I think over a decade ago. So that's a little bit of a challenging section.
There's no is there not like a program that exists with the DOT that says if your project fits these 10 criteria, if you can satisfy it, and if your staff has these credentials, you guys essentially have the authority, you have the capability to do this yourself, kind of thing.
Chris, you would make, I think, every municipality happy in Connecticut if you could make that happen.
What are you talking about? I don't even know what
Like
you're talking about.
companies are all looking for the ability, ways to streamline, become more customer friendly, whichever, and really reduce expenses, i.e. reduce staffing or whichever. So if the state came in and said, listen, you want to put in a crosswalk, and it's a crosswalk that does not involve, if it doesn't need, some level of like technology, like if it's, and you can answer the questions of why an area doesn't need this level of technology. Okay, so if it's where you're talking about over by Tower Ridge, okay,
Yeah.
it doesn't need a light
Right.
because it is this wide of a road, it
Yeah.
is whatever. So that's where it starts, and if it says it doesn't need that, and you can submit it in your design, your plan satisfies this, and this, and you have, your town engineer is a certified engineer or whatever it is, you can implement your plan for the crosswalk without coming to us to have us certify it. And so it empowers the municipality to do things that would be normally under, and it just gets it done quicker, versus it getting sent in and sitting in a queue and then forced rank because of whatever's in front of it. I'm just saying, is there any program for like that at the state level? Anything
That would
that has-
make a lot of sense to have that. You said something.
Yeah. So I just was wondering if there was any kind of a fast track program, like a new, for engineered projects.
I'm just saying, the infrastructure packet that they sent out there, it sounds like there's like a ton of opportunities coming at the end of 2022 for use of money for various.
For use of money, but then ultimately,
That doesn't, yeah.
you know, the whole, it'll still have to be, you know, we identify something. I'm just saying projects that we could engineer ourselves, it'd be kind of cool if they had like a, you know, a quick approval system, whichever. I was just wondering how it worked for Tom, or if everything have to be re-engineered by essentially the state people once we submit them the plan.
That's a good question.
I remember I've had some friends of mine who were in the I'm not gonna tell you what city, but fire department. And they had they had to man the watch room, you know, which is basically the front door where there's a chair and a, you know, TV and every, you know, whatever. Well, the whole room was like circa 1960, and the paint was just falling off the ceiling and all this and stuff. And these guys had to sit there, you know, men and women to sit there every single day, look at this room that was just falling apart. And they wanted to, you know, a couple of them wanted to come in on a weekend and paint it. And they were not allowed to paint it because that was the job of building and grounds of that particular town. And only those people could come in. So they had that project would have to get submitted, go in the queue of the building and grounds for them to come and paint, you know? It's that sort of bureaucracy sort of.
I was gonna say, yeah, bureaucracy at its best.
Increase. I wish I brought my glasses.
That was stupid.
Are there more of them?
Do you want one?
Oh, no, I don't think it's okay. I
This, the thinking of the pandemic,
Yeah.
in the light of the pandemic, increased bus service, explore opportunities for fixed and valid service. You remember this? I remember this conversation.
Take them home. I thought you'd have some at home. I didn't have one in my office.
If you'd implemented it, and people couldn't get out of the bus.
Right.
But it is
But on the
They're
other
figuring
hand,
out, what are they doing?
now that more people are like, I think in town, once we're out of the
I
pandemic,
know, that's what I thought.
does it actually have more applicability for usage than
Let's
it
go
did
out,
5
needs a
years,
copy of
4
that?
years ago, 3 years ago? If more, if
Right,
fewer
maybe
people
everyone
are
else needs a copy.
Yeah.
working, if more people are working from home.
I'll make you a copy.
Well, and it seems like there's always a need for more transportation for older and like disabled
Yeah.
people.
100%.
I mean, I just sitting at church the other day,
Those are gonna write a press
they
release
were
for us.
making a plea to the congregation.
For about
There's
what?
a family that needs transportation for their son. Disabled, lives here in
It is
Simsbury, works at the Stop and Shop in
Everyone takes them
Granby.
home.
Has
No,
older
I was worried
parents who
about-
are having health problems, they're hospitalized, they can't drive.
You were or are?
I mean,
Ellie is.
it's just.
Oh, Ellie
And
is.
it also seems like there's just reaching this.
Can you bring her a cupcake? There's no, oh, there's eggs in the cupcake.
Well, they're probably-
Autistic.
Yeah, they're right, take them home
Oh,
now.
So many services.
No, it's.
Sure.
And now they're adults and their parents are, I mean, it's like, it's
If it's like a
just,
baked egg,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
seems like it is.
Well,
I just can't, you just keep hearing about it over and over again.
12 like whipped
Yeah, and
eggs.
it's-
my daughter brings it
And I
to
think
me.
you're hearing that more and more again
That's
because
what my
as a
daughter's
society,
my
She's no
girl,
longer
my son,
allergic to whatever it is. She might get a little high.
we're sharing.
Oh, because of that.
Right, exactly.
It's better, it's like not a statement to say, I
Birthday
have a
cake, she's
problem.
right.
Or we have a
Right. Well, and I think what happened was like when that stigma started to go away, a lot of services came on because you had a lot of mainstreaming in schools, and you had, services.
Wow.
And now what's
My daughter
happening is
even
that
showed
a
her
lot of
like
those
bicycle.
students that have been mainstreamed,
Yeah, that's true.
have reached services, are aging out. It's like that generation is kind of aging out, and it's like, well, you're 22, the services are gone. Right, and it's like, well, the next step is
No, just like it's.
get a job, but then it's like,
and-
you gotta get to and from your job.
It's hard to see
And, you know,
people
Parents
be
are now
outside.
25 years old, and it's like, you know, I mean, I
Here's
just,
the other thing, is I've been
it's
running,
just
but like,
interesting,
my
because it
question
is
I have
something
is,
that
like, are you gonna go out like
all the
5,
time.
6
Yeah.
There's a whole,
But now it's
there's a whole, not a whole.
I hope that's not on my
Yeah, but there's a
TV.
movement in,
Are you on recess?
whether it's.
I hope you're not
Are you
filming.
on, it's some recess?
It was,
They're trying to
Number of years
and
ago.
now it's over, because we need to make sure we get home.
Thank you so much.
Develop, which is really not
Okay,
development
thank you.
special.
It's half price, it's really.
Repackaging for financial services products. Parents.
Oh, for like trusts and stuff,
I
like,
like that.
Yeah.
The way that the
Can you really down?
Yeah.
Yesterday morning, and like.
What time we going to 6 or 6:30?
Right, right, right.
It had specific riders and
Yeah.
designs to them that for the parents to
Yeah.
facilitation of,
And I took
you know,
this
long-term care.
Right, right,
plans,
right.
design
I do not.
for-
well, but like, you know,
But it comes with
I
costs.
have
right,
low,
and like,
low anxiety.
yeah.
Okay.
But
Parents
moderate
with
stress.
needs.
That's my
They
That just-
probably have the means to help.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing that I did say to
Well,
Maria at one point
Yeah.
recently. In the future, if anyone is not listening to me, they don't have to be, but just to button up, I guess, engage quality workforce. One thing I recently said to Maria is that we should strive that she be the best town manager in the state, because then we will attract people to come work for us. So whatever she can do to make that happen will help us retain and get the best people to come to our town. And that should be a goal for her, maybe during her performance appraisal. I don't know if it's a goal we call out, but it should just be something that we focus on.
Can I ask I'm sorry, the rest, what does that even mean?
It means that people
Like
want to
what
work
metric,
here,
what
that
kind?
people want to work here.
Okay,
Okay.
so, but that's not.
That you know that the boss is good and they're running the town really well, and it wants people to come to work for a company that has good leadership.
So what happens if the board of selectmen is crazy? Do we have any role in that, or is it only on Maria's shoulders?
Well, they voted for you, so.
I'm just
No, what are you
saying,
asking?
it's not on one person's shoulders.
I'm saying as a goal,
So
Is that a goal or is that a?
It's an aspiration.
Mission? It's a mission, it's part of our mission statement.
yeah, that's all. I just think that should be a baked in thing that we strive for her, so that people want to come work for the town of Simsbury. If you don't like that comment, that's fine,
I
but
didn't say
But
I
also,
It
didn't.
seems
the
like-
difference in that is we're elected, she's hired, so that's a difference. I
Yeah.
think that, you know, I think that's what Wendy's trying to say a little bit is that,
How do you quantify be the best town manager? What does that mean? What metric is that? What measurable is that? What comparison is that? What do we know about other town managers? I get the aspiration, but what does it even mean?
it's just, it was just a comment to
Well-
say that that's what we should want for our town.
I think a lot of it, and, you know, for newer, you guys have been here for a long time, and even Wendy hasn't been here for a crazy amount of time, is just seeing, you know, being able to maybe see past reviews, what exactly is being reviewed on, and sort of, you know, really just forward.
Yeah, I mean, we can give the performance reviews, those are available to the board, they're public information, right? We disclose every year.
Yeah, we include them in the packets every year, so they're made available to the public every year as well.
I mean, we have specific goals, and we measure.
And I guess, from the time we went to change to this form of government, are her goals and what you measure and everything, have they always stayed stagnant, or have they changed and evolved?
No, we update the goals every year.
Every 2 years.
Yeah, every 2 years.
But they're not, they haven't drastic, you have not, we haven't taken a, you know, a right turn, a hard right turn.
Yeah.
Plus also the fact that, not defense of, but I think, since anyone would start, you know, you need to build momentum to the success before you throw it. You know, like something drastically different into that veers too hard from the spirit and the core of the roles and responsibilities she plays. And I think, Wendy, I think I understand what you're and I know what you're asking for. I don't know that it belongs for me.
It's not a metric for us.
Yeah, I don't know if it belongs as a one of our stated goals. I think that's, again, it's one of those things that somewhat assumes, this is how I kind of started our last meeting was, I hope these are all sort of, some of the stuff we talked about is just assumed to be and expected to be part of her performance and the expectations of the deliveries of certain services in this town. So maybe we should get back onto like tactical.
Yes, strategic force.
So,
economic development, transportation, spin the wheel, I guess.
Well, transportation, in terms of items that we can probably take off. So one of the items was about increasing bus service, exploring opportunities for fixed route service, and amongst that was an interest in do we need a senior volunteer driving program. So about a year ago, we did do a comprehensive analysis and research on the senior transportation driving programs. Did we have an unmet need? After that research and analysis was completed, we did present that to the Board of Selectmen, and we did not find that we had an unmet need that would correlate to the substantial cost we would have taken on. So I think that we've completed that particular assignment. We did also work with our representative to the Greater Hartford Transit District Board of Directors. We have one seat on that board, and we did work with that agency to determine if increased fixed route service would be viable here. Could we potentially get CT Fast Track out here? Again, unfortunately, based on our ridership volume and our location, we were essentially denied, unfortunately, that request for increased fixed route service. So I do think we did our due diligence, we did our advocacy, we did our research. I don't think that there's anything more that we can do at this time on that particular item, so I think that's what we could probably drop for now.
Okay, so like, I just want to make sure I understand, like, when you talked about the senior, what was that looking at? Was it looking at like the dial ride or something, or?
Yep, so we have right now in place, we have a dial-a-ride program. We also have an enhanced dial-a-ride program for certain what's called out-of-region medical appointments or medical transports. And then beyond that, are there unmet needs for more basic things? A senior needs to go get a haircut, a senior needs to go pick up their groceries. Again, they can use dial-a-ride for that. So again, we took a look at our dial-a-ride data with our vendor, as well as some other data, and we just weren't finding that there was sufficient volume that would justify the investment, because what we would need to do a volunteer driver program for seniors is we would need to invest in essentially more fleet, right? So we've got the fleet expense, and you have to do the volunteer management. Because they're working with frail elderly people, there was, you get coordination, background screening costs, they need to have a public service license. So there was just a lot that went into it, and the memo that we prepared kind of talked about that and hit all those points. But again, we were just finding that there just wasn't an unmet need. There was an interest to see if there was one.
Right.
But after we did all the work, we just didn't find that there was a volume to support it.
And then here's just a question about dial ride. Is that only available to seniors, or is it also available to disabled people that are maybe not seniors but still need transportation?
Yes, it is also available to disabled adults as well.
Okay.
Amber, one thing they talked about was like a volunteer driver program.
Right.
And I think with that analysis, like, don't get me wrong, like, yeah, individual people who tell me they wish that we had better transportation infrastructure, but I think just the cost didn't justify that.
Oh, right. I get it. I just wanted to make sure I understood that it was, I thought it was dial ride,
but we do own.
Does disabled, didn't they start a service through Hartford? They did it at one of the aging and disability. I'm not sure. Okay, I'll have to look that up.
We do own the bus, two of them, right? And didn't, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, 4 years ago, I remember the budget, didn't we just replaced one, right?
We just got a grant, you just got a grant for it.
Right,
Yes.
so that's one, I think that's a good thing to know, is that we're sort of current
Yes.
on the quality of our fleet,
As
right?
long as we can get them delivered here, that's been the
All
challenge.
right, so we're current on the quality of our fleet, and the numbers, but you said the numbers bear out that we are meeting I'm putting it to you, Eric, who's really the expert, we're meeting, we're sort of meeting the number of requests we have, we're at capacity, we're staffed, so to speak, with the vehicles, right? We're not below staffing or below capacity. Is that accurate?
I want Maria or Kristen to answer that question.
Yeah, it was actually pretty remarkable. My recollection, when we looked at the period, I'll have to go back and check in the memo, because we did put this statistic in the memo, but I think there was something like only 2 times that somebody had called dial-a-ride within, like, it was either a 12-month period or an 18-month period, where they couldn't actually take the person to where they wanted to go. But it was something very, very small, like 2 times. And
Okay.
like I say, a 12-month period or something of that nature. But the memo, we did reference that. So I'll go back and take a look at that and research
It's just good, I
it.
think it's good for us to know that we're not like in a, I know it's up there, but we're not in the SBA, we're not in the ambulance scenario where people's expectations are not being met by our social services area, and got fresh, clean buses. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think for that segment.
But I think previously our intent was you were driving at increased transportation options, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, I mean, it sounds like we've exhausted that, right? So are we going to continue to prioritize that or are we moving on?
Looks like take it off.
Yeah, and perhaps you can share that memo with the new board.
Yeah, absolutely. I made a note to do that.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So, I just want to sum that up, so we're saying there's no need, the senior population, because I had heard people asking about transportation.
I think it's a tough thing that many suburban communities.
Because like Bloomfield has their own bus, like they have their own town of Bloomfield's bus. And you sign up and pay a flat amount for the year, and you can call them and they'll take you. They're managed by the senior center. They'll take you wherever you want to go within town, right? It's like 40, it was very inexpensive. And I'm sure, I don't know, I would assume other towns have their own senior bus. So it's dedicated to your residents, it's not, I'm sure it costs a lot of money, but someone had approached me about suggested, or is that in the cards for us? And I know we have dial-a-ride, I don't know what the wait time is for dial-a-ride and things like that. Also the cost, obviously, to own the town bus. And, originally I was thinking ARPA funding, that was really where I started thinking about that, for that kind of.
But that's not ongoing now. ARPA's not.
No, I know, I realize that.
And that might be the same program. So some communities do what we do, which is we actually contract out.
We own
bus service.
we own the asset.
Correct.
We own the buses?
Correct.
Okay, that's correct. But we contract with the vendor to do the scheduling and the driving.
Okay.
So there's really 2 models. There's some
Yeah.
communities that do what we do,
That's
and then there's some communities where the staff is on site, usually with the senior center. So I don't know Bloomfield circumstances, but most likely it's the dial-a-ride and enhanced. Like Granby, for example, they run their own program. They don't use a
Okay.
contractor. But a lot of the other communities in the valley do use our contractor as well, which is Martel. So there's different models, but probably the same program. And then you might recall from the budget process, the state does provide a bit of a subsidy for that program, but that general fund dollars outside of the capital for that program, it's about $135,000 a year that we pay from the general fund and general tax dollars to support that service.
I would maybe put a pin in this button. I have not heard from Kristen or any seniors to say that we don't have an adequate transportation option for seniors. I think we have good quality assets that, from a cost structure, meets the needs of the volume that we need. I think this was on here to talking about the value of expanding transportation past seniors to the broader community, say how much call is there for an evolved transportation program in town. And you've researched it and said it's, not only is it cost prohibitive, but there may not really be the demand even if it was affordable.
That's correct, yeah.
So, is that finished it?
Yeah, no, thank you, Chris, exactly. Greater Hartford Transit District did send us the ridership statistics and things of that nature, and they just said that the volume is there to expand or to bring safety cash back here.
Okay.
And the electric vehicles and stuff like that, would that come under transportation?
Yeah, we can for that.
Um,
Absolutely.
Because, again, going back to the state grants, they're doing a lot with.
You're just like, electric
Wait,
cars.
I mean, like encouraging the town to look at transitioning?
Well, I was gonna go back to
Well,
the CROG thing. They're gonna have funding for chargers. There's infrastructure money to chargers, but that's what I was thinking of. Chargers and swapping for EVs for some of our.
Fleet.
Yeah, where my head goes is to perhaps tie it back to the Clean Energy Task Force's energy plan. And looking at opportunities within there where, feasible and, cost effective implement.
Doing applications in town that they envision will
Yeah.
become charging locations in time, as and when the demand is there.
Yeah, so just a little bit on this. So we do have our registered student intern. He has been following some of the transportation and infrastructure legislation, specifically around the charging stations. They've had an interest for some time in making sure that we have at least 7 municipally owned locations and electric charging station that not only staff, but the general public can use as well. But unfortunately, for a while, the state had a lot of grants, and they were essentially paying for the full cost of that, but it's been a while since those have been available. So we've been following the federal legislation. But again, our hope is that once there are some grant dollars available to do that, is that we could expand our electric charging stations to each municipal facility that we have. Currently, we only have one at Town Hall, but again, there's opportunity to do it at the library, Simsbury Farms, just as a few examples, so.
And the reality is, if we did switch to a more EV fleet, we would have to outfit more here as well, right? So there is again, we have to weigh that as the cost. I'm absolutely for it. I would want to see the incremental cost difference between our current outfitted fleet and the dollar savings, rebates, and everything else. And is there a savings? Is it net neutral, or is it net? Increase on
And
expenditure?
I think that, so we're talking, or ultimately, I think we're talking about just accelerating something that's going to happen, right?
Correct, but if it's a
Ultimately.
10%
So it's not-
cost on top of what
Yeah,
we're paying
so-
today, we have to decide as a policy decision, are we going to pay 10% more
Correct,
before we
because
have to?
just the general sedan that I don't know which department member has a sedan, but, or even the SUV, it's going to be, that model, that Ford Explorer is going to be a hybrid or EV in 5 years or so. You're going to be buying an EV, we're just talking about, am I buying an EV tomorrow or 5 years from now, so.
Yeah.
But you get the,
Sorry.
no, I was just gonna talk about the tax break. Do you guys get the tax credit that's out there now if you buy an EV?
Well,
It's like
we,
7,500.
We don't pay
we're a
taxes.
non-taxable
Oh, that's
entity as a governmental entity. But again, the state for a while was also doing grants, and like my former municipality, we took advantage of this. They were doing grants for a while where if you bought hybrid vehicles or electric vehicles, that they really kicked in a pretty substantial amount of the cost. Again, they just haven't really run a lot of those grant programs of late. That's why we've been monitoring the legislation, just to see when we might have access to some of those funds again.
And the reality is, we don't pay stick for what we buy now.
Yeah.
The question is, are we getting fleet discounts as a part of the buying program? It's not, we don't just go down to the dealership and pick up a vehicle. It's more complicated than that.
But to follow up, so like, let's say in the police budget this year, we have in the CNR, there's 3 police vehicles,
Yeah.
right? Like, what would the numbers look like if there was 2 in 1, would the cost go down over time if one of those was an electric? How do we understand that kind of stuff?
We have to do the initial analysis on it, but we also have to do the, I'm not sure we want to start with police.
Yeah.
Those vehicles run almost 24/7.
Well, that was the only one I could think of where I remembered that we were
Yeah, that's
asking
a
for
fair question,
3,
because
so.
that's a fair question, because it's actually, we have something that is a line item specific per car right
Yeah.
now. So I get, yes,
Yeah,
all right,
thank
so.
you, thank you.
But I think there was there was some, rendering for the state to be putting chargers in at the commuter lot. That was like, that's a logical place the state would drop one in town,
Yeah, I think so.
right? And I don't know, Iron Horse lot or not, but that's.
Right, but if we're going to start.
But that
if we're
that
gonna
was
start
years
doing our
ago.
own fleet, we have to put our own independent station that
Sure.
doesn't get tied up by the public.
Yeah.
In the back, it has to be expandable. Again, I'm all for it, but I think it's more than just a one-off. In the next 3 months, we're going to make an EV buying decision unless there's some pretty
No,
substantial.
but might a priority be that the town staff starts to put this on there, just like looking for street grants?
Yeah.
Be looking to see where are there programs that allow us to adopt earlier without an additional cost, that's all.
Absolutely.
That's great. Yeah, we'll definitely continue to monitor the grant program for the legislation, because this is an area where we can definitely increase the board.
I'm sure Tom Rowe would love to be, he'd love to have that little project.
Sure.
Right?
That's what the energy managers,
Yeah.
There
so
you
we
go.
have-
What do they cost? That's right.
they're going to pay for themselves.
We have limited time. I have a Parks and Rec meeting this morning. But
We're at
economic,
6:30.
Yeah.
economic development, that's something that I think we would be, what's that?
No, I have one on for economic development.
Yeah, I think that we'd be remiss in not putting a robust focus on that.
On economic development? Yeah.
Yeah, and last time, what you did last time was you incorporated the action plan for the EDC, you take essentially those items and use those as your action items for your overall goal list for economic development. I would say, do you want to take that approach again, or would you like to just have maybe separate, higher level sort of economic development goals for the purpose of your goal list?
Well, could we, before, I hate to answer your question with a question, and my dad always yelled at me for that. But would it be appropriate maybe first to knock off some of the things that are already on here, so we just kind of go through those and say, did we or did not do those?
Yeah, and Chris, we,
And then, before we add something,
yeah.
you ask us that question again.
Yeah, no, so in the fall, we can go back easily for you. In either October or November, we did provide you a status update. Some of these items have been completed. So we can easily, compare what's on here against the status report we provide in the fall and take off the items that have been done. Because quite a few of these items have been done, such as updating the business incentive policy. That was completed. We can drop that. The business outreach visits are ongoing. Helping with 350 events, that didn't come to fruition because of the pandemic. We can drop that. There's a number of things on here.
I know Sean's favorite, complete marketing materials.
Yes, it's almost done, almost done.
My favorite is the next one.
The wayfinding signage, we do finally have funds for that.
You love him.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Can I ask a general question? Because what's the impact of our chamber merging with the Granby Chamber? Because we give them money. Now, they're gonna be one chamber, and I don't understand how, or if that impacts us now.
I don't think it does from us providing money. Most of the outside agencies that we provide funding to, they are a regional service provider. So for example, Interval House, yes, they serve Simsbury residents, but they serve the region. Or the Farmington Valley Nurses Association, Meals on Wheels, North Central EMD. Like most of our outside agencies are regional entities that serve Simsbury, Farmington Water, Rivershed Association. So the fact that they're merging and are going to be a regional entity, I don't think that would exclude them from the contribution.
Okay.
I think Melissa's on the board of directors, so she probably is best positioned. I mean, from my perspective, I think it's a pretty neat opportunity to collaborate more on a regional basis, but to also really grow the organization and grow opportunities. That's kind of from my seat, but Melissa's a board member and could probably speak to it better.
And I think having just the two together and having more, just being a larger organization, I think some of the other models in the state, what it's shown is you have more influence, you have more ability to advocate for, like Maria said, at a regional level for a certain thing, if there's something happening at the state or something like that. I think in terms of the contribution, we pay them obviously a membership fee because we're members as the town. And also originally, whether this is still valid, the original intent of the funding that we give to them was for the quote-unquote visitor center, which is located at the Simsbury Chamber of Commerce. And that physical space isn't going anywhere. We're still going to have that presence in the center of town. So, whether or not we still justify our contribution as being for the visitor center or not, or just a general contribution, we still have that asset right in the middle of town.
So that leads into the other question that this whole push for the co-working space that we were going to fund for the Simsbury Chamber of Commerce. That's on here.
That's on here.
Right, so how does that impact it if it's really not our Chamber of Commerce anymore?
I think that project was more of a joint initiative between, us, the chamber, Main Street was involved a little bit in the beginning. Our business resource center, the library. That was more of a, I wouldn't call it a chamber project. We were going to
we were funding them. We were giving them the money to do the work,
for us,
right?
because from a staff
I feel like
capacity,
if our residents benefit from whatever it is we're giving the money to, it doesn't matter if it's up to like.
Okay, it just seems odd if it's really not the Simsbury Chamber anymore, it's the Granby Chamber. That's just how it.
We can certainly look at that during the budget time, but I think the co-working space was a nice idea. As we heard more about it, I'm not sure it was a worthwhile investment, so it might be fine to take it off our strategic.
Well, I know it's
Yeah.
something that
They want-
economic development is still
Yeah.
working on and looking to present. I don't think that we should take something off that
Right.
they're looking to still present.
It's not part of their goals.
It is.
It
There's a
is.
meeting they've been trying to schedule on it for a while.
It's off the list at the moment, but I think
We
they
took
were
it off their
still-
list of goals. They shouldn't be working on it anymore. Yeah,
Someone is.
Is that road?
we set their priorities.
Okay.
So I'm lost.
I have
Or are they
I have a
trying to set
question
up
too.
So you, thank you for, before you answer, process. So you've got, most of the stuff has been, most of the stuff has been knocked off. it looks
Yes,
like.
yes, most of it I would say is completed,
Um,
or the work has been.
And what was the result on the improved wayfinding signage? I'm sorry, was
We
it-
funded that in year-end transfers.
Correct.
Okay, so we've done, that's.
We
okay.
funded it, we just got funding for it, as part of year-end transfers in the fall, so we have not actually, ordered the signs, put them in the
Remember
ground.
my speech about how we finally get to pay for it, and then we finally said, okay. Anyway.
Okay, so then, and then identify infrastructure improvements. That would be an example of something that would get kicked back to the EDC, correct?
Yes, although
Likely?
I'd have to look at their current work plan, but I think that item maybe came off of their current work plan. So again, I can kind of, we can go
It
through
did?
this and compare the current work plan versus old work plans, and just kind of true those up for us.
Yeah, every year we set the EDC's work plan, and we just adjusted that in the one that
Well, they're still talking about it. We keep
Yeah,
getting
they
invited
need
to
us
the
for
meeting.
meetings,
I don't know why, again, we just restructured that, and we specifically took ordinance based off.
So it sounds like there are two things that
We
are
don't know
on,
about it. This chamber doesn't know.
it sounds like there are two things on here that the EDC believes are also still in their list and they're still working on. Is that an accurate statement?
I wouldn't really say that they're working on it, it's that the proposal that we prepared, the EDC staff and the chamber, we've never had an opportunity to really fully.
Yeah, but from their standpoint, the project is completed because they have the proposal, they just never got to
They never had
present
an
it.
opportunity to present it.
So they finished it before it was taken off and they never got a chance to present it.
That's correct.
So they should present.
So they should present it,
That's correct.
okay.
That's,
I think that would be
ideally
the
a lot
right
more
next
than
step.
it.
So, I don't know if this belongs under economic development or if it belongs as a goal at all, but I know in the next couple of years, we will likely be talking about it.
Oh, good. Yep.
Go ahead, let's start with this one. How do you want to put that as a goal?
Well, I mean, we have to figure out how to regulate it, I think that's the
Right,
goal.
I mean,
Yeah.
That's right.
So the state's already figured out how to regulate it, we gotta figure out whether we want it or not, right?
No, but we have
But
ordinance.
we have the opportunity to craft an ordinance that I think
Right.
would further regulate it within our community.
Potato, potato, yes.
Okay.
Whether we're gonna allow it here or not is the
Yeah.
crux of the question, right?
Right.
Yes.
And likely that'll come in the form of an ordinance.
So zoning just opted out, right?
No,
It's a
no,
moratorium.
that's a
Moratorium.
moratorium of
For
a year.
For a year, so
But-
when does that come up? Because we've got to, I'm not saying we kick the can, but how much time do
What?
we have on it?
Yeah, well, the other thing though that just came out too, I asked somebody this question is, I asked you, I think, Eric. So they put a 1-year moratorium, so basically we're not doing any business or allowing any business, but other smaller towns are now allowed, it was reinterpreted that Granby, Canton, Avon, they're smaller, can now also have a retail establishment and may jump ahead of us because we have a 1-year moratorium. But I think you told me we can push that back, or someone told me, I don't know who told me this, that I talked about marijuana with, that we would have the ability to be more nimble if we wanted to. But the 1-year moratorium could be a turnoff to people who could go to Granby, Canton. I don't know if that's a realistic.
Okay, but you're talking about two different things though, I think.
Well, I'm talking about, Yeah.
Eric raised the
I-
concept
ordinance.
Personally, I'm sorry, Chris.
I think if I heard, like, you raised the concept of, do we want to enter into a conversation of how we want to enter
Yeah.
into a conversation around receiving a potential retail?
Yeah.
for like smoking
And I
at
don't-
the bridge
I
or
don't wanna-
something.
I don't want to debate it today.
But yes,
but
I agree
think-
with you.
I personally think that it's an important conversation our board needs to figure out in the next.
right.
I think also, I think to get ahead of it a little bit, it'd be interesting to kind of look at what other towns have dispensaries, how does that, just
Yeah.
kind of get an idea of, kind of the pros and cons and how it's working
Yeah.
in other areas,
I think
has
there's
it
some,
changed with crime or any other aspects? of
yeah,
it?
I think there's some benefit to not being the first one out of the gate, maybe doing it, because you can see how it impacts the community and kind of take some best practices for communities that fit with ours. And I mean, as for other communities getting out ahead of us, it seems like it's to me, it's kind of like a package store thing where, yeah, you might go to another town if you don't have one in your town, but once the one in your town is
Yeah.
open, you're gonna probably just go to the closest one to you, so I don't know that we're missing the revenue that we would get on it being open, but I don't think you're long-term probably missing
Is-
out on too much revenue.
And you just brought up a whole host of things to consider why you think we're going through something. And to me, this issue is one of those that's interesting because the zoning, we generally have tried to say, you do what you're responsible for of each board and committee, and we don't necessarily give you guidance, right? That's kind of how we're set up I think as a municipality at a high level, you know. But this might be an area where the townspeople would be looking to the leadership of the town to represent them to talk about how we want our town to potentially absorb this new event, right? Versus
I don't think
it-
the zoning board would be creating an ordinance regulating this without us.
Correct. And
I mean,
so this is
like,
one of
we are
those
gonna
ones
have
that,
some input.
it's like it's extra use, so it's kind of like this
Yeah.
is one of those ones I think that we
Yeah.
need to better understand really, how we can, are we going to be able, are they kicking it down the road because they're expecting us to take action on a theme or concept? Or are they going to say, no, this is whatever we decide is what this town gets? I think that might be an interesting conversation for some townspeople to say, well, you're the leaders of our town, we would have thought this was a conversation you guys would want to have. I don't want to take any.
I think that this might be similar to the short-term rentals, and that
Yeah.
it could fall under either of our camps, but it might be more effective if we regulate it by ordinance.
Yes.
There's basically two paths, right? You can either do it through land use regulations, which is, not you
Yeah.
guys, or you can do it through an ordinance, which is you guys,
Yeah.
basically.
And what's much easier, when you regulate through an ordinance, when you regulate through zoning regs, it can be very cumbersome, difficult if you have to deal with like compliance issues, enforcement issues. With an ordinance, depending on how we structure that ordinance, right, if it's a license or a permit, it's much easier for you all to be able to revoke that permit, license, et cetera. Bob and Melissa and I have had many conversations around this, and should the zoning commission sort of provide you all with the opportunity, we do think it would be more beneficial to regulate it through an ordinance like short-term rentals as opposed to through the land regulations.
Okay, so then is that why, and I apologize, I'm not up to speed on this, is that kind of the primary motivator why the zoning board chose to,
I think the
Move it up.
moratorium was just to buy us time.
yeah, by who time, them time or us time? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to understand.
Right,
I'm
like
not-
who's advancing the ball, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're getting
Great,
at?
thank you.
Yeah.
So we clearly need an education session on who's on first with this one.
Yeah.
What our responsibilities are, who goes first and who doesn't. So maybe that's our priority, is to get educated on
Yep.
marijuana, and then our role and what strategic direction we want to take it in.
And I think that's enough of a conversation
Right.
for now, because I know
Right.
it's gonna take staff time, and that's why it was good.
That's
So-
an important one.
So another ordinance, and have you guys ever been asked for a food truck ordinance?
Oh, gosh.
Okay, I'm not saying I
We
want
have
one,
one food truck in town.
but I was just curious, that like, we don't have one and we're pretty, right, so, but I know towns do, and I just didn't know if you guys have ever, if it's come up to you at all.
No, the only time I've seen it is on Facebook this summer when we had one food truck.
Yeah, I think we legislate.
Well, that was allowed to be the whole time.
Okay, so can
Yeah,
you,
that's
Maria,
On
can you
private
go
property.
back, please, can you go back and ask your question again so I don't dismiss your question?
Oh, about the EDC, so, yeah.
Or how to, I thought your question was really how to frame approaching the concept of this being a Board of Selectmen goal.
Yeah, I think in the past, again, the past 2 cycles, you had incorporated the EDC work plan, but, we could choose to go in a different direction because they have their work plan. You guys go through that exercise on an annual basis with them. Are there other economic development projects that, are more forward focused? Are there other sort of higher level goals? So I think, this is a great example. Like, this would be a great goal for your board, but not necessarily part of the EDC work plan, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think if you have other sort of high-level goals like this that aren't already part of the EDC work plan, that these would be very good to include in your goals for the next 2 years.
So does the PAC fall under EDC at all?
Arguably.
Depends on who you ask. On a big concert night, the businesses would say no. But overall, I think, yeah, because you're bringing people to our
Raises the
community.
stature.
Right.
That's just throwing it out there.
Yeah, no, it's
We have a lot of stuff going on there, and, we're trying to get those grants in so that they can get the money for the backstage and the money for the bathrooms.
I wonder if that's even better, maybe.
quality of life.
Quality of life. Well, that's kind of like culture. Do we have any, like, culture, is culture any of our?
Parks and Rec.
Oh, culture, Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
What, where's the culture? Yeah, because
Just
it's,
forget about it.
what other cultural?
Maybe probably not right.
Oh, culture, gotta go back to the whole thing, are we delivering, is that something that's assumed?
Infrastructure?
One thing about PAC, I think I should mention the word PAC. Who is the gatekeeper, who is the gatekeeper of the facility for scheduling? Is that Missy, is that whomever, whatever, she has the,
Depends on when.
what's that?
Depends on when. We give them control of the facility from a date.
From April 1st, right.
Yeah.
So then, does that mean that the code opens up for her essentially to manage the calendar? Is that it?
Yeah, she manages that. I think she coordinates very closely with Tom Traverse.
Yeah, okay.
Their needs and uses
Right,
of it.
but she has higher, but because of that, well, I'm gonna make this statement, probably wrong, but because they have use of it, the preferred use, they have hierarchical preference over anything else then? If they want that date for.
There's a provision in there, I thought, that they can't unreasonably withhold our access down there, right, for unreasonable.
I don't have a problem, I'm just trying to understand.
No, there's a provision in the contract, I believe, and this is something we negotiated, they can't unreasonably withhold a request for us, because we own the facility at the end of the day. But everyone else has to go through them. I mean, like, in high school graduation is scheduled, I think that's part of the contract, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think we do try to work fairly closely.
Yeah, I'm,
Scheduled.
right, I mean,
Okay, thank you.
What's up?
no, I'm just, I work with them a lot and with Missy on scheduling events and things, and, I mean, I guess, she manages that calendar, and I think whatever she needs to, like, I don't know what coordination takes place when she's like scheduling a new event there or something, and has to make sure that there isn't a conflict with something that the town has.
She has no obligation to check for conflict, we're going to tell her, as generally how it's done.
Except for the graduation that
I think
is in the
that's the only one
contract.
that's
What's
standing
one of
there.
what is occurring is not what is occurring is that as they sell themselves, which means they're filling their calendar.
Right.
The sports leagues that historically use that facility are now being pushed elsewhere, which is okay because that's what the agreement states. But it's a new phenomenon that's occurring that didn't happen 10 years ago because the facility is becoming more popular.
Well, yeah, I definitely think that there is, I mean, this, like, there's more of a push, right, to do more development and to bring on more people, and I think to have more events and stuff there, and that is gonna push out people that are able to use the field when
It's
it's
our
not
nicest
otherwise
lawn in
used.
town.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe just as something to throw in there when we do the next contract, should we talk to the sports leagues about guaranteeing access or something? This might be something for us to think about.
Yeah, it should be, I think that either there's more consideration for, blackout windows or whichever, or the window gets shortened, that they have complete authority over it.
Yeah, or whatever. I mean, again, they get together in February and they agree on the season, hey, soccer can have it every Tuesday and Thursday until whatever, again, whatever it is, but if we can enhance the contract and again, not trample on their ability to do shows down the road, I'm sure they'd be willing.
It's very interesting what Heather and I learned, just some of you folks may or may not know this, that again, as we are always touting how much this town runs on volunteerism, and there's so much that's assumed that's done by paid people, but all the field coordination is done by the heads of those leagues on their own without any planning by town at all. I mean, Tom does as best he can, but they're all coordinating themselves for the betterment of the youth and children. We don't have a central scheduling system. We don't have, real time. It's basically we're working with paper and whiteout and and landlines. That's how archaic the coordination of youth sports is in this town. So it's going to continue to come to a, it's going to continue to come to a head, I think.
Well, I mean, is it premature? I mean, from the Culture Parks and Rec side, President, do we need to go on fields, or do we need to start talking about a strategic plan for fields?
I think you're gonna get me in my soapbox,
Well,
and this
please
is somewhat selfish because this is somewhat
Simple yes
selfish.
or no,
Yeah, I'm sure certainly selfish because I have children who use the fields, right? So please, look, consider how I'm delivering this through the lens of my, the lens that I'm looking through. But as the quality of a youth sport experience continues to move upmarket across this country, and that's the consumers are looking for more than what we're offering now. And it's not, when we were, I hate to say when we were kids, but everybody expects a greater experience. So whether it's multiple turf fields, whether it's lights, whether it's irrigation, whether it's seating, we are probably, to a certain extent, considering the level of youth sport activity in our town and the assumed sort of demographic of where we sit, I would say that our fields, and the amount of fields and the quality of our fields are on the lower end from what people would expect if you go to our, because I can't stand it when people compare, well, for a mill rate, if we're looking at, we're not those towns. But in some senses, we are, people do look at those towns, and I would say that we're not competing with our peers in that
But
space.
are those towns paying for that, or are
Yeah.
these leagues that?
No, it's a combination of both. I mean, you look at, I would encourage anyone here to go to Glastonbury, go to Glastonbury High School, and look at the amount of money that has been put into that, to the entire sport, the sports complex, which is a youth experience, it's all about youth experience. And, or look at Granby. Look at Granby's is a beautiful sports complex for recreation and fields. And we've got one turf field in town. You've got Curtis Park, which is beautiful, but it is assumed to be for soccer only. Different conversation. Put that hand grenade in the middle of the table and run. But the rest of sports, if you think about the rest of other sports, field hockey, lacrosse, I guess the other one to really consider, they're by and large limited to municipal, to elementary schools, or the Henry James.
So you'll let us know if we need more field or not.
We were
But yeah, I
told-
would to add to that, because it's not just, our parks that's access for parks and rec and things, but even, up through our schools. Our high school facilities for athletics are behind a lot of other schools, and James as well, and it is,
Yeah. I mean, we have a challenge. We don't have a pool. We have an antiquated track, right?
oh, but even, I mean,
We have a lot of challenges. We don't have our own ice facility.
Yeah.
I mean, take the sport and there's a deficiency. Our press box isn't big enough because the league board of selectmen didn't build the football team, the biggest bleachers.
I mean, it took us all the way down to the grass.
Yep.
It's not even the turf.
Yeah,
Or the lack thereof.
I bet you there would be so much that this town could do with just water and grass. It's mind-boggling. It's not talking about I'm not talking about building domes and we need a turf field up here. But I think if you spend some time walking around those fields, you'd be like, wow, this is kind of a different. This is not the experience I expected compared to some other towns.
I mean, I played on this field. I think
Yeah.
but I'm the wrong person.
Well,
Yeah.
the
So-
baseball fields were good and the hockey, we had to multiple hockey rinks, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna play due diligence here, not due diligence here, if we're gonna invest in our athletic fields, we heard a lot of people wanting pickleball courts in town too. And if we're gonna say we're gonna upgrade
That's part of the
to this for
national
athletic
parks.
fields, then we need to do it for the seniors, because they're also paying it.
Pickleball is in the Parks and Rec, the master plan.
Yeah, that's brought up earlier.
And,
But
but
other,
what, you know,
those
but
other,
under
other fields are
economic,
not, you're saying other athletic fields are not in Parks and Rec at all?
there is some are, some are not the ones that are under the purview of the Board of Ed, the school.
Yeah, I guess, and I'm not a anti-sports, because I get to play a lot of sports, but I guess you get the question of what about, if the town's investing a lot in these sports, and your child doesn't participate in sports, what is your return, what are you?
Yeah, but we're investing in seniors and we don't have, not everybody has a
Well, no, I'm
senior.
saying, I know,
So
but I'm
it's-
just,
We're part of an ecosystem, I would say, a community ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's part of, you know, the one thing, here, okay, let's blend something potentially, idea for the future, economic development. We could take care of it if we encouraged an outside organization to come in and develop, you know, that's the kind of things you should be thinking about, potentially.
Because folks have to go to the skating rink.
Oh, that's interesting, that's an interesting, but that's, you know, we start to think, Wendy, if you start to think in the sense of your children were active in sports, and I know, but there is a place, I think, for private entities to building sports facilities, which fuel, I know how much money that I spend traveling to other towns in hotels, whichever, to go to tournaments on weekends. You bring that liveliness into this town and 3
well, they're trying
weekends.
to bring the hockey.
So I'm just saying, so maybe there's a place for, you know, this
Yeah, no,
conversation
it
to
is.
occur as we
It is.
expand
Yes.
our mind.
Yeah.
You know, not just saying, hey, the Board of Ed's gonna pay for seed at Henry James. There's
Yeah, no, I agree,
a couple ways to
that's
skin
true.
it. And they also they also promote a certain set of open space.
So back to the economic development, you know, just, I guess I have a couple of things. One, when we look, 'cause I see a lot of these goals, are the goals meant to be executed by, we kind of have a lot of different economic development arms. And so there's the Main Street Partnership, and then there's an Economic Development Committee, and then we have the Chamber of Commerce that sits. And so, you know, when we look at these goals, then where do they get then sent out to? You know, which group, is it to all of them, three, how does that?
Yeah, I can answer that very, very easily for you. We'll send out the EDC work plan. So again, on an annual basis, this was the EDC work plan at that point in time. And each work stream or work team, each action item, we assign staff members. Sometimes the staff member might be the Main Street Partnership, sometimes that staff member might be the Chamber, sometimes it might be us, sometimes it might be the Business Resource Librarian. So in addition to identifying the EDC members who are working on those items, there's also, again, a staff member who's clearly identified on that plan to support that initiative. And it could be the Chamber, could be us, could be Main Street, but that's all clearly lined out on that one-page work plan. So we'll make sure to send that along for you guys.
From a bias standpoint, Heather, I would answer that generally in the last 10 years, if you want it done, you want it done quickly, you give it to Main Street.
Yeah, that's what
Because Main Street has a hand in everything from an economic development standpoint. Our EDC, I think we've done a much better job of working with staff. It's more of our research, business outreach arm. But, you know, again, I mean, we've had this conversation. We're not going to go land in Amazon. We're not going to go land a Hartford. And that's not what our Economic Development Commission could even do. It's really nipping around the edges and improving overall. And then I think the Chamber has evolved over the last decade to, I think, always a good membership group and more of those collaborative business type events, but not necessarily a proactive arm from an execution standpoint, and to no fault of their own, but I think they're set up a bit differently, has been my read on the organization. Is that fair?
Yeah, I just was wondering, because when I look at a lot of these goals, it seems like a lot of them were Economic Development Committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why I was asking.
Main Street is a
looking at these
big
here,
piece
because
of
I know
this.
Main Street does they're primarily the ones who work with businesses who come in and the town planner, and, you know, I know Sarah does so much for our businesses. She's the point person and front man with them and keeping that contact with them. So that's why I was asking, because it didn't seem like a lot of these things on here that we had that looked like they pertain to Main Street.
No, I mean, like like Sarah's typically handled the refresh on the marketing stuff. She was working with you guys right on the cell phone stuff.
You know, I know she kind of pioneered the cell phone stuff, but I was just
Yeah.
out of a lot of these things, sorry.
I think with economic development, a lot of the initiatives can be sort of a collaboration between multiple groups. So for example, to your point about the chamber, Sean, I think in the last couple of years with the new executive director, we've been doing more. It's not just specific to the members. So for example, talking about this potential job fair idea. And it's, now that the unemployment benefits are coming to an end, how do we get people connected to our local businesses? And that's going to be a partnership between EDC, social services, and the chamber. And that's, not something that there's not going to be any fee for. It's just something that's going to try to benefit the community. So I think it's pulling different resources together to work on some of the economic development initiatives.
Is the Business and Career Center, is that still part of that? And I think that there was a focus to try to loop them in more. From what I saw at the library, I know Sherm was a great asset there for that. But are they still participating in things like that? And
Yes, I mean, that position's vacant right now.
Right.
But absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was, very active with the EDC and some of this work too, so yeah.
So with that position vacant, are we finding, I know he primarily got more with entrepreneurs than the small businesses, are we, I guess is there a deficit now because of it? Are we finding that entrepreneurs are lacking that sort of support right now?
So during the times of transition that we've had in that position over the years, there are other staff members at the library. They don't necessarily have that specialized, that's what they do every day, but I know that the Adult Services Division picks up and covers for that function when we've been without that person in the past.
All right.
Okay, really well. Just an optics point, I don't like that marijuana is the only goal of economic development.
In addition to the work plan, I think we're going to.
But I hope, I want to get it published in the context of everything else.
I think that's in addition to what we already defined through our goals.
Well, we do have, I was just gonna say, we are gonna have a goal of dealing with the ADU opt-out this year. That's gonna be a big goal, and I don't know what that falls under. But it's gonna definitely be on our agenda before January 23.
Well, I guess with economic development too, I mean, if you look at how much our residents pick up a lot of our tax burden because we do not have a lot of businesses, and if you look at economic development, how do we find growth opportunities in either bringing more local businesses in and retaining in that category the ones that we have? But I think a lot of our businesses, and they say they'd actually do better with more employers in town and, some sort of come to Simsbury, get out of your car, sort of pedestrianize, walk around. Because when you go in one store, then it leads you to, what's this store, what's that? And you kind of don't necessarily catch that. And then we talked about how we could grow our downtown a little bit to be a little more pedestrianized, get out with a stroller, get an ice cream, go in a few shops, and, make that sort of back area a little more cohesive.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is we've applied for it in Main Street, like the charge of a bunch of the streetscape screens.
Charette.
Charette. So, yeah, I mean, I think we have been trying to tackle that. The other piece is the wayfinding, which again is my soapbox. That was a big piece of it because we heard, people don't know where to park when they're coming to town. They don't know that the pack exists. They don't know where the restaurants are. They don't know where. So that was a big piece of trying to fund. And again, I say chipping around the edges. Again, we're not short of buying the state parking lot, which we would have to pay for and then flip to a developer. There's not a lot we as a municipality can do other than improve our regs, improve our process, improve our signage, improve the exposures and the sidewalks down there, which I think is what we've been chipping away at to make that more desirable. I mean, we've got the parcel being developed, the old Gerard property, right? Which I think is a big piece with the PAC and how we tie that in and their infrastructure improvements. So I think to your point, Heather, we need to keep looking at how do we contribute that last 5 or 10% or tie it all together to get people down there. But, the challenge is we've tried for as long as I've been alive to attract businesses to this community. And I'm not saying it's a place where we're going to fail, but it's a challenge. You've got to hire and have a firm, and it's a different skill set than I think what we put on EDC. And Sarah's probably the closest resource we have to that from an outreach standpoint. But it's I think from our role, I think we've been more successful to the retention, improving cell phone service, broadband, sidewalks, parking, access, all the things that plague the employers and businesses, that they can't tackle on their own.
Yeah, and I think that, I'm glad you mentioned that, and this is my mind. I think that once that property comes online, and then the executive inn comes online, we may see something we don't yet see, because we don't know. So,
Are you talking about the property, the
Right.
units? Well, that's what I was wondering, could
Yeah.
that potentially be a catalyst for growth?
Yeah, services that
Small
we need
businesses
downtown.
and services being needed downtown, and have they thought about what that would potentially be?
Right, because we may do.
Renderings from the charrette.
Yeah, the shred has a lot to do with would this be accurate that the shred has a lot to say about that view, that vantage point?
It does. I mean,
In a sense, what I'm saying, if you're standing at the back, if you're standing at the end of the back side of the pack field, like with your back to the river, I'm saying that viewpoint, the shred talks a lot about that whole area. And it's gonna be interesting once, again, I think that once that project comes online, and although Iron Horse isn't necessarily part of it, that might help us see more of that view, understand more what they're talking about in that viewpoint, or update it, or know about, we need to put streetscape improvement down there, we need to change the types of trees that are there, all kinds of things we
The
need.
intersection that goes Simsbury Bank, whatever. it's
Simsbury
called
Bank,
now,
yeah, that intersection, yeah.
How do we tie those sidewalks in? Again, St. Mary's made their improvement. The one thing that I was busted, the shred always had the church failing and a road going through there, that
Yeah.
obviously isn't gonna happen. But, how do we, making Station Street two-way was part of it. How do we revamp the senior center parking? That's a lot of it. We bought the Hudson property and put a park down there. And again, how do we tie all that together? The Baker property in terms of, are we gonna put, Hiram had always advocated for a bigger trail system in there. Because we own all the land down towards the water. People don't understand that. We put a boat launch down there. There's been a whole bunch of studies that have all, we've got thousands of pages of data, right? And some of them are probably a little antiquated, but again, we've invested a lot of money. How do we tie that all together? And I think part of it is, again, making those investments. And again, I'm using it as an example, but we used the year-end transfer to pay for the wayfinding signs that had been in a couple of different studies and we actually went out and talked about. So I think that's where we're chipping away at that kind of stuff, and I think we just need to keep that as forefront when we have that extra 50 grand or 75 or 25 or whatever it is. The entrance pillars, et cetera. Yeah.
I think also, when you look at Terriffill Village,
Yep.
have there been any renderings of what that could also look like with a little more economic development? You think of Collinsville, you think at some point when you get a bike path through there in Terriffill Park, there's a lot of storefront potential to, kind of almost, I don't know, just Collinsville kind of comes to mind of having that sort of
Right.
economic development in Terriffill as well. And I don't know if like similar to the charrette, have any drawings been, the renderings been done of what that could potentially look
We
like?
had a bunch of, we were looking at the four villages. Did we ever do one for?
At
We
least
did
during
one for
my
Utah.
time during my time for Terriffill, we haven't. But I think the point had come up a little earlier in the conversation, good infrastructure, good bones is very good for economic development. And that was definitely one of the many factors, with making the decision to move forward with the renovations of the sidewalk in Terriffill. So they had the good roads, good drainage, good sidewalks. We have also recently explored, unfortunately, we weren't able to find a revenue source, but bringing natural gas to Terriffill, that was something that was tried to do back in 2016.
Yeah, we had the fire department and the school ready to convert.
Yes, we did. It didn't come to fruition, so we did revisit just this past year in the summer and fall. Again, our traffic authority team really looked into that. Again, unfortunately, we weren't able to find a grant. It was a rather substantial cost. to do that. I think it was around $1 million to bring that from Nest to Terrible. But I think it's continuing to look at good infrastructure, good bones, because that does really help ultimately support.
Who owns the boathouse?
So,
Let's not go there.
it's town property, but the boathouse is actually owned by the Friends of Simsbury Crew itself. The boathouse,
Imagine
but
if
the
we,
land is town.
imagine if we allowed for a 3-month lease, operator's lease from June, July, and August to an outside river operator, and we had our version of
Yeah, Collinsville.
Collinsville
Karen
Canoe.
had brought that up for the,
You know, 'cause we don't do any, this
You
town
proposed that
has
for the
zero,
river.
I mean, everybody
Right.
knows that the engine, everybody's recaptured the river, right? I know the farming's
Yeah.
river, but if you, I mean, the amount of bodies that would come to this town.
Right,
And
yeah,
Chris,
right.
to your point, anecdotally, there are businesses that will move in very quickly if we had the infrastructure.
Well, I know there's an operator that's looking for a new place, but it's, you know, that could be, I mean, the Friends of Simsbury Crew, I know certainly, you know, they were a participant in it, and they're money funded. And there's ways, but I'm just saying, that kind of thing is like, that's awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Where do we have
So-
to
That's
get
awesome.
come to fruition with the ramp there? There's a lot of ways to talk about it.
I want to ask you a quick question. So, like, I think it was in Madison, they have boat storage. People can store their kayaks, they have racks, and you pay to lease a spot. And they're along the river instead of you having to drive and bring your boat or live downtown. I don't know, I just, in the town gets money, like, you install the
The crew chief
boat.
owns the inside of the boathouse.
Pardon me?
The crew chief owns the boathouse, so they do rent out space.
Oh, they do? But how much, is there a lot of space there?
No.
Okay.
And it's an access issue, because, I mean, we've got hundreds of $1,000s of town asset in there.
Oh,
so you
yeah,
can't just let anybody-
But I was thinking, like, I guess the problem down there is the flooding, like Curtis, there's the, people
Yeah.
go in down
Yeah, and
there.
I'm not necessarily saying the outside operator comes in and uses the inside of that building.
Yeah.
I'm saying,
Truck.
I'm saying the space is
There's
kind
one
of,
that stops on the guy with all the.
yeah, but I'm talking about, we facilitate something, this, you know, we start to stimulate economic development, something that's structured, that's on a town asset, that, you've got it all there, because getting access to a river is near impossible, and, you know, in 2022. You're never gonna do that again, right?
Who just mentioned the Dewey property off of Terry
Oh, that was
Lane?
in,
Where was that?
that was in the ARPA conversation.
I like where you were with that.
Yeah, because we own.
Oh, yeah.
We own
I
riverfront
really
there.
like that.
I know, I didn't know
Where
that.
What do we have,
you
6
were
months?
with that.
That's my third good idea, that 6 last year, 6 years. Joe, get that on tape.
His name is Chris Peterson.
We had it divided up for housing.
I didn't know, so I could walk down there with my dog,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
the Dewey
Yeah.
property.
The problem is you gotta get a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers to put any kind of access in.
Yeah, that's what I'm
You can
saying,
do
in
it,
this
but
day and
it's
age,
problematic.
Stop. Stop. There would be a lot of stabilization.
But I can walk over there.
Yeah, you can access
Have me?
it, yeah. But to Chris's point, we already have the access and the permit. Now, the dock, I believe the crew team owns the dock. Anyway, we can work on.
okay, we work with them to upgrade it, this is investment in economic development,
But
that's
it's-
ancillary.
Did someone tell me that we also own the proper, so the Sycamore Tree lot, right, the river's there? Do we own a piece of property across the street on the corner of Nod Road? I was told we did.
That dirt, I mean, that's,
Yeah, there's like a.
parking there, the
yeah,
rocks.
Yeah,
Across the street, so if the Sycamore's on the right, it would be on the left.
And it's kind
There-
of like just.
FVRA wanted to build a boathouse
on the
there
right, yeah, on
years
the
ago.
right-hand side, going down Nod Road, before you get to the gun range.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
rocks,
Right.
I
Someone
think
said that was town land.
It's either ours or the state, I can't remember. how it
Okay,
is.
because that, someone mentioned
might be
too, that
ours.
that's like a really empty spot where you could have a launch or racks or something like that.
yeah, again.
Yeah, I mean, if we drop $15 million on a boathouse.
Yeah, and then again,
Like Glastonbury
the
did.
insane permitting that would take place to get access to the river, you just don't do it anymore. You know, that's like, you know, that's something that most people would be like, you know, as far as fast tracking through.
But Heather, back to your point for revitalizing Terrible, I mean, do we try to accelerate with pennies from heaven in terms of bringing the trail up there
What you both
as well?
working on
Because
that.
that is one of our biggest impediments, is that's gonna be one of our largest infrastructure costs in my board lifetime, to get the trail.
Yeah, we have a meeting, there's actually a meeting on that, because Steve Mitchell's been pushing it, and Hampton made me, and then Tom Roy,
Yeah.
to get this group together for updates, because there are a few updates that may be able to be part of the design study, whether grants one of the ideas was, they were trying to, they didn't know which way to go. So Tom liked going along the river because of the scenic and the boardwalk. Quarry Road is like a death trap. And then somebody suggested going through Governor's Bridge, and they were starting to look at those three options. So,
Any of them.
but that's I mean, that's up there somewhere, isn't it, the bike trail, like? okay.
Yeah, you talked, you
Yeah.
mentioned about
Yeah,
that.
and that's
Mike is actually
potential,
incredibly
Yeah.
supportive of that.
you know, when we
Trail.
meet with them, but that's a potential, you know, for the selection agenda item perhaps at some point to get all the updates and what options are out there for
Yeah,
grants and,
yeah, I said that about it too, and I was saying, to Tom Roy, we should put together a big project plan, with like each project, and then who's doing what, because there's so many parties involved, right? Can we get a state grant, is the government have to do, you know, who has to do something to make that happen? There's a lot of different people, not just our town. So what are the next steps?
Yeah, so
You guys
in the
condense
past, what we've
this.
done is, exactly.
You
at
guys
some-
condense it and
We'll
we rank
condense
it.
it, we'll sort of organize all your thoughts into the topic areas, put them into full sentences, that sort of thing. We'll typically circulate the list to you all and ask for assistance in how do you guys individually send us your priorities. We've done it in two different ways in the past. Sometimes we've said, you know, please rank these as like high, medium, low, or sometimes we've done a point system. So we'll ask you to do some sort of ranking. And again, we'll take all of that, we'll coalesce it, we'll bring it back to you to a meeting in open session, so you'll be able to sort of see a draft, and then you'll see the draft, you'll kind of see where priorities fell for the group, and really that's kind of how you start getting to a final list. So typically we do that as part of a regular meeting. So yeah, so we will work on that and get that back to you.
and I don't want to go back to this, but the fostering and engaged high quality workforce, the only bullet point there is engagement of departing employees. And I just was wondering if you could add the idea of skip level sessions to it, because that has to do with actually the workforce who's currently there.
Do we want to add an all-employee survey in there, or?
If we
I
want
mean,
to-
we don't like, I mean, some
We're
people,
not getting too tactical.
yeah, and too much of a, they're a pain in the butt, but.
They're expensive too. You
Yeah.
can do them. so.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of ways to tackle them. You fund education, you fund job growth, you fund skills training, advanced degrees, right? I mean, there's professional development, going to conferences once they're back.
But some of the people are not at that level, some of the people are just the day-to-day workers too. I don't know if they get those opportunities or not.
I mean, some folks do, I mean, it depends on their skill set and all that, right? It depends on the union they're in as well, but, you know, I mean, in prior administrations, we've taken away training opportunities and publications because of budget challenges, but we, put them back recently. And we talked about, 360 reviews and other development items for the next level down. There's ways that we can fund this, but again, we've got to come up with the money for it from an execution standpoint.
Right.
If anybody wants some cupcake candy or anything like that.
Thank you for bringing those
I
up.
don't
We
know.
have to,
It's like you did that.
to adjourn.
It's way too much. Oh, yeah. Oh, do I have to adjourn?
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Joan.